After another round of Evelyn's punishment, which mostly involved her pinning him to the sofa and lecturing him, Leo ran a hand through his messy hair and headed for the kitchen. He rummaged through the pantry. He'd given all the fresh food to Helena, which left him with a couple of hot dogs and half a box of cereal. Great. The daily existential crisis of figuring out what to eat for lunch and dinner was probably the most annoying part of his day. His cooking skills were decent, but he was lazy. Hated cooking. Hated doing dishes even more. He found himself missing the days when Helena was here, at least when it came to meals. "Hey, Professor," Leo called out, grabbing a knife to slice the hot dogs. "You go all day without eating. Aren't you hungry?" Evelyn just huffed, refusing to answer. Leo glanced over at her. She was still trying to look angry, but compared to this morning, the fire in her eyes had definitely dimmed. She looked listless, drained. He was sure she was starving. She was just too proud to admit it, too stubborn to show weakness in front of him. He shook his head with a small smile and went back to the sad-looking hot dogs. But then, staring at the knife in his hand, an idea sparked in his mind. He narrowed his eyes, tried to coax the latent power stirring within him. A faint, crimson energy began to swirl around his wrist. Evelyn's head snapped in his direction. In Leo's hand, the flowing blood-red energy solidified, forming a short, crimson blade about the length of a rolling pin. Blood magic, crimson edge. Leo blinked. That's it. That's the size. His eyes met Evelyn's. He distinctly remembered her version of this trick, producing a long, wicked-looking, impossibly cool red blade. His version looked like it had been run through the wash on hot. Evelyn burst out laughing, her eyes dripping with mockery. "That's not how you use blood magic." Leo looked at her, curious. "Then how do you use it?" "Oh, right. How did you make that giant scythe? That thing was awesome." She crossed her arms, sniffing disdainfully. "You're a long way from that. Don't think just because you copied my abilities that you can't." Her taunt died on her lips as the atmosphere in the room shifted. Evelyn's brow furrowed as she stared at Leo. His expression had become serious. He closed his eyes, focusing inward, feeling the power surge through him. The blood in his veins raced, boiling like a geyser, flowing into a strange new organ he could suddenly sense within himself. It was a blood-red core, like a ruby, a second heart that pumped with infinitely more force than his first. As his blood passed through it, like an ethereum crystal at the heart of a Magitech engine, it was converted into a thick, sanguine mist. This time, the mist was far denser than his first attempt. Evelyn's expression finally turned serious. She watched, captivated, as the crimson energy swirled around Leo. To grasp the very essence of blood magic in such a short time, could a human truly possess the extraordinary gifts of the noble bloodlines? Under her astonished gaze, Leo smiled faintly. The crimson edge in his hand morphed with his thoughts. One moment it was a handsome red longsword, the next a slender, elegant dueling rapier. Then a curved Bowie knife, a combat tanto, a Damascus scimitar. All the famous blades he'd seen in movies and games appeared in his hand, one after another, until finally the blood-red energy contracted, solidifying into the familiar shape of a chef's knife. Leo started slicing the hot dog with his crimson edge. "You." Evelyn's eyes went wide with disbelief. "You're using the noble magic of the blood." "For that." Leo shrugged. "So what? Powers are meant to be used. Why get so hung up on the details?" He grinned, popping a slice of hot dog in his mouth. "HM, not bad. A little tough, even sliced this thin." A fresh wave of indignation washed over Evelyn. She shot to her feet, but the sudden movement sent the world tilting. Her vision blurred, and her body, weak with hunger, collapsed back onto the sofa. "Professor." Leo rushed over and helped her sit up. "Are you okay?" She pressed a hand to her forehead, utterly spent. As much as she hated showing him any weakness, she didn't have the strength to pretend anymore. She could only glare resentfully at the man supporting her, her voice now a faint whisper. "Hungry." "So it really was hunger," Leo said, amused. He offered her his wrist. "Here." He made a face. "I really don't like the idea of a vampire biting me and leaving two little holes, but if it's you, Professor." He shrugged again. "I guess I can make an exception." But Evelyn just shook her head weakly. She pushed his wrist away. As Leo watched, confused, her gaze drifted slowly toward the kitchen, landing on the plate of sliced hot dogs. "I want that." Leo stared at her, then back at the plate, certain he was hallucinating. What was happening? Evelyn wanted a hot dog? His vampire professor, Evelyn Abraham, wanted to eat a cheap processed sausage? "Hurry," she whispered, her eyes starting to glaze over. "I'm dying." Seeing that she was about to pass out, Leo could only walk back to the kitchen, mystified, and bring her the plate. Professor, are you sure you want this? You didn't suffer some kind of cognitive breakdown after everything, did you? I mean, can you even eat? Before he could finish, Evelyn snatched the plate from his hand. Without a shred of her usual grace, she stuffed a piece into her mouth and began chewing ravenously. Leo was floored. If he wrote a paper about this and submitted it to the academy, it would probably cause an earthquake in the fields of occult studies and anomaly biology. This was the first time Evelyn had ever eaten human food, and she was doing it under Leo's dumbfounded stare. She chewed for a moment, then looked up, a hint of a blush on her cheeks. "Don't look," she snapped, turning her head away. But Leo was still looking. So Evelyn fled, plate in hand, scrambling toward the master bedroom. "Hey, wrong way. Room 101 is over there." Leo pointed. She huffed, spun around, and dashed toward the correct room. "Want some black pepper?" Leo called after her, curious. "It'll taste better." His answer was the deafening slam of a door. The old house fell silent once more. His mind buzzing with this incredible discovery, Leo hurried upstairs and locked himself in his alchemy lab. The room, filled with shelves of books and glass beakers, looked a lot like Evelyn's office. He pulled down several occult texts and began to read by lamplight. Could lowering a being's corruption level actually alter its fundamental biology, change its instincts? Or maybe, just maybe, all the classic vampire traits, aversion to sunlight, the need for blood, the sudden shifts in eye color, the corpse-like pallor, weren't innate at all. Maybe they were symptoms of a disease caused by corruption. After all, in this world, magic wasn't what you read about in fairy tales, and vampires were just another class of anomaly. This was a massive discovery. As night deepened, Leo read on. He wasn't really planning to publish a paper and shock the academic world. He didn't care about that kind of fame. What he was thinking about was something Evelyn had said during his second timeline rewind. Back in her attic, she had expressed a faint disgust for her own vampiric nature. She wanted to fit into human society. She had once longed for sunlight, for good food, for all the things humans took for granted. If he could actually make that happen, maybe he could make her genuinely happy here. Late at night, immersed in a sea of knowledge, Leo vaguely heard the sound of a running shower. He opened his door and glanced down the hall. The bathroom door was closed, and he could hear the steady rush of water from inside. He smirked. For her first day, she was certainly making herself at home. His eyes were getting heavy. Leo yawned and headed toward his own bedroom on the second floor. Just then, the bathroom door creaked open, and he came face to face with a freshly showered Evelyn. "You're looking a lot better, Professor," Leo said with a smile. Steam billowed out from behind her. Whether it was from a hot shower or the fact that she'd finally eaten, her cheeks were flushed with color. Evelyn paused, still not wanting to talk to him, and continued drying her wet hair with a towel. Leo had assumed she would change into some of Helena's clothes, but she was wearing one of his own white button-down shirts. Probably because Helena's clothes were too small. His shirt, however, fit her perfectly. He let his gaze wander, not even trying to be subtle. The hem of the shirt fell just to the top of her thighs, that perfect zone that made it look like she was wearing nothing underneath, accentuating the long, pale line of her legs. "Had your fill?" she asked, dabbing at her hair and shooting him a look of disdain. Leo just shook his head. She glared daggers at him before turning back into the bathroom and shutting the door. When she emerged a moment later, she was wearing one of Helena's plaid skirts. She looked at him with a triumphant, mocking smile, as if to say, "Now what are you going to stare at?" Helena's style was fairly conservative, so there really wasn't much to see. He had no choice but to shift his gaze upward. The white shirt did nothing to hide the full curve of her chest, and the high-waisted skirt cinched her waist, making her hourglass figure even more pronounced. Somehow, Professor Evelyn looked even more alluring fully dressed. Seeing his gaze grow even bolder, she shot him an exasperated glare and turned toward the stairs. Leo's chuckle followed her down. Maybe it was his imagination, but despite her disdainful expression, he felt like her attitude toward him wasn't quite as hostile as before. As he watched her go, he called out playfully, "So, Professor, how are the hot dogs?" Evelyn stopped and seemed to give the question genuine thought. She hesitated, then nodded. "Human food, it seems," she said slowly. "It's actually pretty good. The pantry's empty now. You should buy more tomorrow." "You got it." Leo grinned. "Anything for you, Professor. Your wish is my command." "Umph. Smooth talker." She turned her head, her expression cool. "Don't think you can sweet-talk your way out of this. I still hate you." Leo nodded. "I know." Evelyn took a deep breath, a wave of helplessness washing over her as she looked at his complete, an utter lack of remorse. She spun around wordlessly and hurried down the stairs. The heavy slam of the door to room 101 echoed through the house. Looked like she was angry again. And yet, affinity, 49, it had actually gone up. Leo shook his head, smiling to himself. The whole Sundra act is a little outdated, Professor. He went back to his room, closed the door, and turned on the light. Read the paper before bed, lights out, sleep. The first day with his new housemate passed peacefully. A new week at Blackwood Academy brought a few changes to the Magitech A-Track classroom. A substitute teacher had been brought in to cover for Professor Evelyn's extended leave, and a new transfer student was introducing herself. This male substitute wasn't nearly as strict as Evelyn, and whispers constantly broke out across the room. Everyone was wondering why the infamous Professor Evelyn, who never took a day off, was suddenly on long-term leave. Was she seriously ill? It wasn't that the students were concerned for her well-being. Most of them had breathed a sigh of relief when they heard she'd be gone. The demon professor was just too intense. Every one of her classes was a nail-biting ordeal. This substitute, by contrast, was a total pushover. Leo glanced at their euphoric, relieved faces and scoffed internally. You guys have no idea how good you had it. So what if this guy was handsome and soft-spoken? He had no idea what he was talking about. Was he just here to collect a paycheck? Evelyn might have been strict, but she was a brilliant teacher. When Leo had first arrived, the textbooks might as well have been written in another language. But under her rigorous tutoring, he could now solve the most complex problems. The moment class ended and the sub walked out, the room erupted into chaos. Leo propped his chin on his hand and stared out the window, half listening to his classmates gossiping about the cult kidnapping case from the papers. They hadn't been talking long when the room suddenly fell quiet. Leo turned around, confused, and saw a girl in a school uniform skirt sitting brazenly in the empty seat next to him, a wide smile on her face. Leo Sterling, can I talk to you for a bit? Her direct approach immediately drew hostile glares from some of the other girls. Leo rarely spoke to anyone in class. They'd barely gotten a word in with him, and now this new transfer student was waltzing in like she owned the place. Didn't she know there was a pecking order? Everyone was stealing glances, many just eager for some drama. Talk. Leo studied the cheerful girl. She was the new student. Yeah, she chirped, nodding enthusiastically. Not interested. Leo turned back to the window, but she didn't seem to mind his cold shoulder in the slightest. She scooted her chair even closer, leaning her body toward his. I introduced myself earlier. My name's Tina. Did you forget? She even copied his posture, propping her chin on her hand, but she did it on his desk, and she wasn't looking at the view. She was looking at his face. Leo was used to being hit on, but he'd never seen anyone this forward and cheerful about it. Their faces were practically touching. He sighed and turned back to her. Looking at her smile, he frowned, a strange feeling prickling at the back of his mind. Just then, another voice cut in. Why are you in my seat? The seat's rightful owner, Chloe, was back. She glared at the girl who had stolen her spot and was now shamelessly trying to seduce Leo. So angry, she looked ready to drag her out of the chair. When the girl didn't move, Chloe reached out to grab her. But Tina dodged the grab with ease. You. Chloe started to say something, but as Tina slowly turned her head, an indescribable chill washed over her. It was like being stared down by a venomous snake poised to strike. Touch me, Tina said, her voice low and cold, and you die. The raw killing intent in her eyes made Chloe's breath catch in her throat. A student her age had never seen a look like that. She froze, the word she was about to say completely forgotten. Her nose began to prickle with tears, and she turned and fled. All eyes in the classroom were on them now. A few of Chloe's friends looked like they wanted to step in, but as Tina's gaze swept coolly over the room, the murderous aura became almost tangible. The temperature seemed to drop by several degrees. Instantly, every student fell silent and buried their noses in their books. When Tina turned back to Leo, her expression was once again sweet and sunny. So, Leo, cut it out. Helena, Leo said, exasperated. Tina, or rather, Helena, didn't seem surprised he'd figured it out. She gave him a playful wink. Her eyes flashed from brown to a brilliant cerulean blue for just an instant. You're so smart, big brother. You guessed it, she whispered, her voice low and conspiratorial. I knew you'd recognize me. Is there a reward for getting it right? A reward? Leo asked, a smile playing on his lips. Helena tilted her head, her eyes twinkling. A reward? Of course there is, she said happily, grabbing his arm. Come with me. As the other students watched the new girl lead Leo out of the classroom, laughing and talking intimately, they all looked at each other. So being that direct actually works? Good to know. On a sun-drenched afternoon, Helena led Leo by the hand to a bench beside the school's garden. She had already changed back to her original form, but was still wearing the Blackwood Academy girl's uniform. She navigated the campus with a familiarity that made her seem like a real student. "So, what's this reward, anyway?" Leo finally asked. He thought she was joking at first, but now it seemed she actually had something for him. "Sit down, brother," Helena said with a smile. Leo sat on the bench, about to ask again, when Helena covered his eyes with her hands. "Close your eyes first." He chuckled, exasperated, and did as he was told. "Now hold out your hand." He obediently held out his hand. A moment later, he felt something light, shaped like a box, touch his palm. Her hands moved away, and Leo opened his eyes to see a pair of nervous, expectant blue ones watching him. "What's this?" He looked down. It was a small gift box tied with a neat bow. Curious, he unwrapped it. Inside, a deep blue cravat with a subtle plaid pattern lay nestled in the box. He hadn't expected a gift like this. In this era, business ties hadn't been invented yet, so neckerchiefs and cravats like this were quite fashionable. It wasn't one of those overly ornate aristocratic styles, but something between formal and casual, perfect for someone his age. He was surprised she had such good taste. Helena looked down at her feet. "You gave me a gift once, even though it broke, but they say you're supposed to give a gift back, so I wanted to get something for you too." She watched his face, her own a mixture of nerves and anticipation. "Do you like it, brother?" "Of course I do." Leo took the cravat out and held it up to his neck. "I love any gift that comes from my little Helena." "Oh, good." Helena let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Seeing him fumble with it, she smiled and stepped forward to tie it for him. "I didn't know what you'd like. Yesterday, right after I got my human form back, I saw an ad in a tailor shop window on the street. They said it was the latest trend for the gentlemen of New Haven. I don't really know what that means, but I figure it must be good." She didn't seem to know how to tie it properly either, just wrapping it around his neck once and knotting it simply. "There were a lot of ladies buying them for their husbands," she said, blinking with a smile. "And I thought, you're always just wearing a plain shirt and the weather is so cold. This will keep the wind out." After she finished, Helena hopped back to admire her work. Leo tucked the cravat into his jacket and did a little spin for her. "So, how do I look?" "Handsome," she declared, her eyes sparkling. "You look handsome in everything, brother." Leo smiled at her. The afternoon sun bathed her face in a soft glow, making her smile seem impossibly pure and her pale gold hair shine. Her joy was infectious. But even in this perfect, heartwarming moment, a decidedly unromantic question popped into his head. "Wait a second," he said, looking at her curiously. "Where did you get the money for this?" Since she'd been on the run, she shouldn't have had a penny to her name. Helena froze. "Well, you see. And another thing," Leo looked her up and down, taking in the uniform. "What's this about Tina? How did you become a transfer student in my class? You don't even have an ID. How could you enroll?" Seeing the evasive look in her eyes, Leo knew something was up. He asked, his voice firm but gentle. "Helena, tell me the truth. This girl you're impersonating, where's she right now?" Helena looked guilty. "Oh, you mean Tina. She's fine, she's not dead." Seeing Leo's expression grow more serious, she quickly explained, "Don't look at me like that. She's really okay. I locked her in her house." Before Leo could say anything, she rushed on. "But don't worry. To make it up to her, I gave her lots of money. Everyone likes money, right? She'll definitely forgive me." Leo felt a headache coming on. Locked in her house. More like locked in her basement. And her identity was stolen. But that brought him back to the other issue. "Lots of money? Where did you get lots of money?" he asked, staring in her eyes. Helena giggled. "Yesterday, when I was wandering around, I saw a very well-dressed gentleman leaving the bank with piles and piles of cash. I followed him for a while and asked him to give it to me. So he did." Leo's eyes widened. That was called robbery, and he highly doubted the man just handed it over. He could only imagine what really happened. Helena smiled, sitting on the bench and linking her arm through his. "It's okay, brother. I didn't show my real face. They'll never catch me." Leo sighed and leaned back on the bench, his head throbbing. She'd been living among humans for a while now, but somehow he felt like even Evelyn was more law-abiding. As they sat there, Leo noticed Helena pull out a small notebook and start scribbling in it with a serious expression. Curious, he leaned over to see what she was doing. She immediately slammed it shut, hiding it from him. "Keeping secrets now, are we?" Leo said quietly. "Brother." Helena changed the subject, jumping up from the bench excitedly. "You don't have any more classes this afternoon, right? Let's go shopping." "Sure," Leo agreed without a second thought. He did have class. But who cared? Helena had reverted to her human form far quicker than he'd expected, which meant she'd been using the suppression serums consistently, despite how painful overuse could be. She must have been dreaming of the day she could be herself again and spend time with him. He wasn't about to disappoint her. So, what was skipping one class? During what should have been his lecture, Leo was holding Helena's hand, leading her through the busiest market street in the East End. The street was packed with people, colorful banners fluttered overhead, and the air was filled with the calls of vendors and the scent of grilled meats and sweet pastries. Helena walked ahead, pulling him along, her eyes wide as she tried to take everything in at once. Brother, I want to eat that. That looks good too. Look, brother, there's a circus act over there. The smile never left her face. Her eyes shone with a genuine joy, as if every single thing here was a wondrous discovery. Leo shook his head, amused. She knew New Haven far better than he did. None of this was new to her. The real reason she was so happy was because this was the first time she'd ever gone shopping with her brother. But something fell off. The street seemed unusually crowded today. He looked up and saw that every shop was decorated with colorful flags. The street was jammed with people, though he spotted a few patrol officers in dark overcoats mingling with the crowd. Even the guy selling grilled chicken wings from a small cart had a balloon tied to it. Was it some kind of holiday? Finally, his curiosity got the better of him. He asked the vendor, "Excuse me, what's the occasion? Why is it so crowded today? Oh, and how much for the wings?" The man looked up at him. "Heard that princess who's always away is back in town. The king's so pleased he gave us all a month's tax break. That's why everyone with a cart is out today. Wings are 6 pence each, 2 for 10. Leo froze. He glanced quickly at Helena. She was still mesmerized by the circus act, not paying attention. He lowered his voice. "Which princess?" The man gave him a strange look. "Which one you think?" "The one who's always away for her health, tucked away from the public. Gotta be the 5th princess, right?" Hearing the answer, Leo's stomach tightened. "Ophelia." "Sure. Hey," the vendor hissed, lowering his own voice. "Watch it, kid. You don't just go around using Her Highness's name like that." But Leo wasn't listening. He stared at the festive, flag-draped street, his happy mood suddenly replaced by a gnawing sense of dread. This was bad. The market street was still buzzing with life, but Leo's mind was a million miles away. An image of a quiet girl with silver-white hair floated in his thoughts. Ophelia. She had been a main female character of the 2nd chapter in his first playthrough. Back then, she lived in a remote country manor, and he had no idea of her royal status. They were thrown together by a minor case involving mysterious livestock deaths. After they dealt with the monster responsible, they became acquaintances. Later, she became the second contained anomaly after Helena. There was no fight. He'd invited her. She was less of a prisoner and more of a second housemate. But Helena hated her. Maybe it was because of her status. Maybe it was her looks, or maybe it was her personality. And Ophelia, well, in some ways, she was even more trouble than Helena. Leo's head was pounding. Her sudden return was not good news. The vendor was looking at him expectantly. "You buy in or not? Don't block the line." "Oh, right." Leo bought 2 wings, his mind elsewhere. He kept one for himself and handed the other to Helena, who was still watching the circus. She turned, and her sensitive nature immediately picked up on his mood. "What's wrong, brother?" she asked, her brow furrowed with concern. Leo snapped back to the present, forcing a gentle smile. "Nothing. Just thinking this chicken is way overpriced." "Is that all?" Helena blinked. She knew that wasn't it, but she didn't press him. Leo pointed toward a section of the street where the crowd was even thicker. "Let's go check out what's over there." "Okay." Her smile returned, and she happily grabbed his hand, pulling him into the throng. Leo watched her, his mind racing. She couldn't find out about this. Not now. Helena affinity. 100 corruption level. 20 her body had just stabilized, her emotions finally evening out. If she found out that one of her former housemates, the one she despised most, Ophelia, was back, she would completely lose it. All his hard work would be for nothing. Hand in hand with Helena, Leo strolled past stall after stall of street food. Her eyes lit up at every new sight. She wanted to try everything. Seeing her so happy for the first time in ages, Leo threw caution to the wind. Every vendor they passed, no matter what they were selling, he bought one of everything. The vendors were stunned. They were happy to make the money, but their faces all screamed the same thing. "Can the two of you really eat all that?" "You have no idea," Leo thought wryly. They walked from one end of the street to the other, Helena eating nonstop. The armful of various foods Leo could barely carry quickly vanished, drawing astonished looks from passersby. The girl looked so delicate, but she ate like she had a black hole for his stomach. A whole street's worth of food wouldn't be enough. Brother, am I being a little much? Helena whispered, tugging on his sleeve shyly. Everyone's staring at us. What do they know? Leo said, completely unconcerned. Hey boss, one of each of these pastries. All 30 of them. You sure? You heard me. And no box. We'll eat them on the go. Brother. Helena blushed. That's too many. Leo ignored her. He shot a dirty look at a teenage girl who was gawking at them. What are you looking at? He snapped. Never seen a beautiful girl eat before? After they'd eaten their fill, they went to a clothing store. The weather was still chilly, and Helena's wardrobe consisted of nothing but skirts. Leo wanted to buy her a coat. He had her try on several, using Professor Evelyn's impeccable fashion sense as a guide, and finally settled on a simple, elegant white coat. Evelyn was a fashion icon. For a guy with no style like him, her taste was an invaluable resource. It's so warm, Helena said, spinning happily in front of the mirror. Does it suit me, brother? Is it too mature? She asked, looking at his reflection. It fits, Leo said, his voice neutral. But in his head, he was thinking a style like this needs a certain figure to pull it off. And Helena's chest. Well, let's just say she has a lot of growing to do before she reaches Evelyn's cup size. Helena, oblivious to his thoughts, saw him staring intently at her chest and blushed, looking down at the floor. So brother likes girls' chests. I'll have to try harder. After the food and the shopping, evening had fallen without them noticing. Holding Helena's hand, Leo led her to the most expensive part of the East End. The hustle and bustle of the market faded away, replaced by the faint, elegant sound of a piano. The restaurants here were opulent, offering the city's finest dining experiences. The clientele consisted solely of nobles, the wealthy, and New Haven's elite. In short, it was a place for respectable people. As they entered the restaurant, the sound of a solo piano washed over them. A waiter politely took Leo's coat. Brother. Helena instinctively tightened her grip on his hand. She'd never been to a place this formal. She'd been less nervous facing down a dozen armed men. Don't worry, Leo whispered, ruffling her hair. It's just a restaurant. It's no fancier than the snack carts outside the academy, and the food probably isn't as good. Oh, Helena nodded, though she still stuck close behind him as they were led to their table. A waiter with a practiced smile showed them to a table by the window. Once seated, Helena looked around curiously. The men and women were dressed so elegantly, their movements so graceful. She felt like she was from another world. The piano music ended and was replaced by a beautiful but unidentifiable violin solo. The light from the crystal chandelier cast a soft, romantic glow over the room, and several young couples made their way to the dance floor. Everyone here must be married, or at least dating. Brother. Helena looked up, her eyes shimmering. Are we on a date? Leo paused and smiled. Whatever you want it to be, Helena. I just wanted to take you somewhere you've never been, to experience things you've never experienced before. Oh, she said, looking down again. So it's not a date then, but she was still happy. She watched her brother order their food with an easy confidence, then rested her chin in her hands and gazed out the floor-to-ceiling window at the night sky. A massive airship drifted slowly overhead, the etherium crystals in its engine casting a beautiful blue glow. Closer, the lights of New Haven glittered like stars. It had been a perfect day. A faint smile touched her lips. It felt like a wonderful dream she never wanted to wake from. I wish it could be like this forever. The peace was shattered by a loud voice. Leo Sterling. Finally found you. Man, you're hard to track down. Leo and Helena both turned to see Captain Raymond's pushing past a waiter, rushing toward their table. His voice boomed through the restaurant, drawing curious looks from the other patrons. Leo just glanced at him before turning back to Helena. Want anything else? He asked gently. No, brother. This is enough. Helena whispered, gesturing subtly toward Raymond's. Isn't that the police captain? Aren't you going to talk to him? Leo sighed. The second I see him, I know something bad is about to happen. The warm, peaceful atmosphere evaporated with Raymond's arrival, because a system notification had just popped up in Leo's vision. Save point. The Royal Cove restaurant available reloads. 5/5. Captain Raymond strode toward them. Needing to speak with Leo, he instinctively moved to sit opposite him, right next to Helena. Before he could, Leo shot out an arm and yanked him into the seat beside himself. Captain, get to the point. Raymond's, taken aback by Leo's irritated tone, blinked in confusion, wondering what he'd done to offend him. Helena covered her mouth, stifling a giggle. Raymond's cleared his throat, looking embarrassed. Sorry to interrupt your date. It's just, I have an urgent matter to discuss. It's about that missing student case from the academy. Leo looked at him, puzzled. I saw in the papers that the case was closed. They even put your picture in. Raymond shook his head wearily. We closed it too soon. Something else has come up. Something else? Had more students gone missing? Wait, Leo said, a different thought occurring to him. Why are you coming to me about the disappearances? I don't know anything. This wasn't the timeline where he and Raymond had hunted down Evelyn together. In this final playthrough, he'd acted as a concerned citizen, tipping off the police anonymously and pinning the blame on the Cult of Truth. As far as Raymond should know, he had no involvement in the case at all. But the captain just gave him a look that said, "Who do you think you're kidding? How could a case like this not involve you?" Raymond scoffed. From the moment you came to my office asking for the file on the Cult of Truth, I could tell from that calm look on your face that you already knew what was going on. And what do you know, that very afternoon, we get an anonymous tip. A tip from someone who didn't even leave a name, he muttered, staring at Leo. Who else could it be? Leo smirked. Looks like after 4 years, you've gotten a little smarter, Captain. Save the compliments. Raymond's cut in. More people are missing. Students from your academy. How many? What year? Leo's brow furrowed. 5 of them. 4th years. That was strange. 5 more all at once. And stranger still, the mastermind behind the original disappearances, Evelyn, was currently locked up in his house. There was no way she could have escaped, and, in her current state, she no longer needed to feed on humans. Seeing Leo's confusion, Raymond's added, the 5 students are all on the Magitech hybrid airship program. Seniors about to graduate. This afternoon, they were on a class trip to the airship factory. The 5 of them were in a group together. They boarded a tour vessel, and then, for no reason, it climbed to a dangerous altitude and vanished into the clouds. The entire NHPED is in a panic. We've even had to notify the military. Leo nodded grimly. The military wouldn't be concerned about 5 students. They'd be concerned about a missing airship. Even a small tour vessel going missing over the capital was a major incident. But who was behind it? Leo refilled Helena's glass with juice and looked back at Raymond's. Any leads? Raymond shook his head. Most of my officers are downtown, rounding up the last of the Cult of Truth members. We've got nothing so far. It wasn't them, Leo said flatly. But Raymond looked confused. Weren't they responsible for the first few missing students? Leo gave a slightly awkward smile. He'd only used them as a scapegoat for Evelyn. He never imagined there'd be a follow-up. Besides, these were clearly 2 different cases. You couldn't just lump them together because they both involved missing Blackwood students. But if it's not the cult, then what is it? Raymond's was getting more confused by the second. Why would they kidnap Blackwood students? What's so special about your school that every psycho in the city is targeting you? Leo took a bite of steak that Helena held up to his mouth, chewing thoughtfully. Actually, it's not that hard to figure out. You have an idea? Raymond's eyes lit up. I knew coming to you was the right move. Leo finished his bite and wiped his mouth with a napkin. Then he calmly refilled Helena's glass again, leaving Raymond's practically vibrating with impatience. Leo, come on, spit out. Leo looked at him and smiled wryly. It's a copycat crime, my dear Captain. A copycat? Raymond's paused. You've never handled a case like this in your entire career? Leo asked, watching him think. He sighed. There was a movie based on a true story, a serial killer the police never caught. The only suspect they had was released due to lack of evidence. But the truth was, it was never just one killer. All the later murders were just copycats, mimicking the first one's methods. The papers have already reported that the cult was responsible, Leo explained. So whoever took these 5 students was probably trying to obscure their real motive and pin the blame on the Cult of Truth. The more he thought about it, the more sense it made. I read the file. That cult has a lot of members, and they've been hiding in the shadows for years. They're the perfect scapegoat. If that's the case. Raymond's frowned. This is going to be a lot harder to solve. Leo nodded. The best lead they had now was the airship itself. A target that big couldn't stay hidden for long. As they both fell silent, Helena gently pointed out the window. Brother, look. 1 second, Helena, I'm thinking. Brother. Helena's voice rose slightly. Why is that airship getting closer? In an instant, Leo and Raymond snapped their heads up, looking out the floor-to-ceiling window. Against the dark, cloud-covered night sky, a massive airship was descending toward them. The blue glow of its etherium crystal was growing brighter, more intense. And its nose was tilted down. It was falling. Oh no! A cold dread seized Leo. He shot to his feet, grabbing Helena's wrist. Run! Seeing Leo drag his girlfriend toward the door without a second's hesitation, Raymond jolted back to reality. He drew his service pistol and ran to the front of the restaurant, bellowing at the top of his lungs. "Everyone, evacuate the restaurant now." The violin music continued to play. The diners looked up from their meals, staring in bewilderment at the shouting police officer. Seeing them all frozen in place, Raymond swore and fired a warning shot into the ceiling. "What are you waiting for? That airship is going to crash. It's going to explode. Do you want to die?" The shots silenced the violin. The restaurant erupted into screams and chaos. Swept up in the panicked crowd, Raymond finally stumbled outside and saw Leo's retreating back. He took off after him. Raymond chased Leo and Helena for 2 full city blocks, finally slowing down when they were several hundred yards from the Royal Cove. He bent over, gasping for breath. How can you run faster than me? Stop. We're safe at this distance." Leo and Helena finally stopped. "The core on that thing is only half a cubic meter of Ethereum. It'll only take out a building or 2. Why did you run so far?" The 3 of them stood there, watching the falling airship, their hearts still pounding. As it descended, the massive vessel was already engulfed in flames, thick black smoke pouring into the sky. The terrifying sight brought all the pedestrians on the street to a halt, their faces turned upward in shock. "Brother." Helena squeezed Leo's hand, her voice trembling. Leo squeezed back, lacing his fingers through hers. "It's okay." But his brow was deeply creased, his eyes fixed on the ship's trajectory. It was getting closer, closer. Finally, seconds later, the top of the airship touched the ground. Like a chain reaction, a profound blue light erupted from its core. But what Leo saw was completely different from what Raymond had predicted. The blue light didn't just flash and die. It expanded, radiating outward at an impossible speed. In that instant, the dark night sky lit up as if a second sun had been born. "Brother." The last thing Leo heard was Helena's terrified scream. The last thing he saw was her tentacles erupting from her back, trying desperately to shield him. Then silence. In the restaurant, Helena curiously pointed at the approaching Captain Raymond. "Isn't that the police, Captain? Aren't you going to talk to him?" Leo's eyes flew open. He was back. Save point. The Royal Cove restaurant available reloads. For fifths, the cheerful violin music played on, the oblivious diners enjoying their evening, completely unaware of the horrifying end that awaited them. Even with Helena's anomalous constitution and Leo's vampiric healing, they had both been vaporized in that terrifying blast. There was no chance of survival. Leo's heart hammered against his ribs. He immediately looked out the window. The massive airship was still far away, but its faint blue glow had already caught the attention of a few people on the ground. They probably thought it was part of some festival celebration. "Leo." Captain Raymond walked over, looking apologetic. "Sorry to interrupt your date, but something else has come up." Leo shot to his feet. "Captain, whatever it is, my thing is more important." He grabbed Helena, who was still mid-bite. "Brother?" Her mouth was still smudged with food. "What's happening? Why do you look so pale?" "No time. I'll explain later." Without another word, Leo pulled her toward the exit. "Hey, Leo, wait." Raymond hurried after them. Leo moved as fast as he could, not daring to waste a second. "Leo, what's wrong?" his old friend called out. He finally paused for a fraction of a second. "Captain, do you trust me?" "Of course I do," Raymond said, completely bewildered. Why was he saying this? And why did he keep looking up at the sky? "Good." Leo gave him one last, meaningful look and pointed out the window. "See that airship? In 1 minute, it's going to explode and destroy everything around here." With that, he turned and ran, pulling Helena out of the restaurant and leaving a stunned Captain Raymond standing in his wake. "Huh? What? Wait, airship?" Raymond realized what he'd said and looked up. His confused expression instantly transformed into one of horror. Leo dragged Helena out onto the street. The explosion was far bigger than he'd anticipated. They had to get as far away as possible, as fast as possible. He scanned the street. It was an upscale district, so it wasn't as crowded as the market they'd been in earlier. Leo pushed Helena into the back seat and sat next to the driver, shoving the gun in his face. The driver's face went white. "Hey man, don't do this. I haven't had a fare all day. I swear I'm broke," he pleaded. "I don't want your money." Leo dumped all the coins and bills from his bag onto the seat and pressed the gun to the man's temple. "You, turn around. Drive." "A robbery where the robber pays you?" The driver was baffled. Leo's finger tightened on the trigger, his eyes cold as ice. The driver scrambled to turn the ignition key. Okay. Whatever you say, boss." The steam taxi's engine coughed to life, spewing a cloud of acrid smoke. "Where to, boss?" the driver stammered, his eyes glued to the barrel of the gun. "You got to give me a direction." Leo lost his patience. He stomped his foot down on top of the driver's, flooring the accelerator. Shut up and drive. Straight down the street. Full throttle. The small Ethereum crystal in the steam boiler flared, and the strange three-wheeled car shot forward like a spooked horse. As the cold wind hit his face, Leo felt the knot of tension in his chest loosen just a fraction. Brother, Helena, who had been sitting silently in the back, finally spoke. What you told the captain, was it true? Is that airship really going to explode? Yes. Leo looked back at her. And we're all going to die if we don't move. Helena nodded silently. His words made no sense, but she trusted him completely. Explode? The driver shrieked. He glanced in his rearview mirror and saw it. The airship was tilted, descending slowly. Back at the restaurant they just fled, a gunshot rang out, and patrons began streaming out, screaming. That had to be Raymond's. Leo just hoped he'd listened to his warning. The scale of this explosion was beyond anything he could imagine. Only now did he have a moment to think. An explosion that powerful couldn't have come from a single airship's Ethereum core. It was as if someone had taken the cores from every vehicle in the city and strapped them together. What was the goal of something this massive? After a minute of frantic driving, they had put some distance between themselves and the restaurant. And then the explosion came. Leo looked back just in time to see it all. A single point of blue light, followed by a silent, expanding shockwave. The uncontrolled magical energy from the Ethereum core instantly consumed hundreds of yards of city blocks. Even from a mile away, he could feel the hot wind on his face. The driver was paralyzed with fear. If it hadn't been for this crazy carjacker, he'd be dead. The taxi bucked violently as the shockwave hit them. Helena clenched her fists, 6 black tentacles instinctively bursting from her back and reaching for Leo. Brother, look out! But this time, it was Leo who lunged into the back seat, wrapping his arms around her. The shockwave shattered every window in the taxi. The steam boiler sputtered and died, its small crystal flickering out. The driver, his face a mess of cuts from the broken windshield, screamed in pain. Helena was completely unharmed. She looked up at her brother, her expression complex. He had moved without hesitation, the look in his eyes one of raw fear and concern for her. She had never imagined a day when he would be the one protecting her. Brother, a warmth spread through her chest. She hugged him tightly, gently running a hand over his back. Does it hurt? Leo saw that she was okay and breathed a sigh of relief. He waved a dismissive hand. It's just a scratch. The minor injuries were nothing to him now. His back burned and stung from the glass shards, but the wounds were already closing, pushing the tiny fragments of glass out of his skin as they healed. Oh, Helena finally relaxed. The explosion was over. Leo kicked open the crumpled car door and stared out at the devastation. In the distance, the buildings within a 1-kilometer radius of the blast were skeletal, scorched black husks, smoke billowing from their ruins. Screams echoed through the streets as chaos consumed the city. Helena stood beside him, her hand finding his. She had never seen anything like this in her life. New Haven hadn't seen a disaster of this magnitude in decades. Leo had a sinking feeling that the peace this city had known was about to come to an end. As they stared at the smoldering ruins, another steam car, this one trailing black smoke, slowly rolled to a stop in front of them. A disheveled Captain Raymond climbed out. Leo, thanks. Thanks for the warning. He gasped, his chest heaving. The adrenaline was just now wearing off. If it wasn't for you, I'd be dead back there. Leo looked him over. A few cuts and scrapes, but otherwise, he was in one piece, as indestructible as ever. That was Raymond's for you, the fastest cop in all of New Haven. The two men exchanged a weary, grim smile and sank to the ground. Raymond stared at the wreckage, his brow furrowed. This isn't just a simple kidnapping and theft case anymore. The sound of distant screams made his voice tight with anger. What was their goal? Targeting so many innocent civilians. It's monstrous. It's pure evil. A bloody ritual by the cult? A declaration of war from a rival nation? Or the possibilities grew more dire with each thought, spiraling far beyond the jurisdiction of an East End police captain. As Raymond's wrestled with the implications, police sirens wailed from all directions, converging on the blast site. The area was frequented by the rich and powerful. If they were hurt, the entire NHPD would be held responsible. Leo frowned, piecing together the fragments of information in his mind. An upscale location frequented by the rich and powerful. A hijacked airship. Students who knew how to fly it. The cult of truth. A copycat crime meant to confuse. And a single balloon. This afternoon, the streets were decorated with flags, and the king had given merchants a tax break. It was all to welcome someone home. Leo's face hardened. He looked at Raymond's. Where was the fifth princess having her reception tonight? The question hit Raymond's like a physical blow. Even he, slow on the uptake, understood the connection now. His expression grew even darker than Leo's. He pointed a trembling finger toward the ruins. The Imperial Hotel. It's over, was Raymond's first thought. They said the fifth princess was out of favor with the king, but she was still royalty, his youngest child, a figure so far above him he couldn't even comprehend it. And judging by the citywide celebration today, the rumors of the king's displeasure were completely false. He clearly adored her. But regardless, the fifth princess had died in the most affluent, secure district in the city. On his watch, he was finished. Raymond's face was ashen. Assassination. He whispered. It was an assassination. But Leo, hearing that Oilia was in the middle of that blast zone, that she was very likely dead, felt his world tilt on its axis. Impossible. How could she? Oilia is dead? Right under my nose. Just like that. As his mind reeled, he felt a firm grip on his hand. He followed Helena's wary gaze and looked down the street. A massive black carriage, drawn by 4 powerful horses, was racing toward them. It moved at an incredible speed, shimmering with a faint, mystical light. Leo squinted. On the side of the carriage was a complex crest, a black dragon, a sword and shield, and a thorny rose. A royal carriage. Raymond saw it and jolted, a flicker of excitement in his eyes. Not the long live the king kind of excitement, but the realization that the carriage was coming from the direction of the blast. It had to be the princess's. Leo, look, he exclaimed. I'm not going to lose my job. The princess is alive. Hey, Leo, what's wrong with you? Leo's expression was the exact opposite of Raymond's. The moment he recognized the royal crest, his face fell. He crouched down as if he had a sudden stomach cramp, pulling Helena down with him. Don't look back. Don't see me. Don't see me. The royal carriage thundered past them, kicking up a cloud of dust that coated the 3 of them in grime. Helena waved the dust away from her face, frowning. Her gaze followed the reckless, speeding carriage, her eyes narrowing. That was her carriage? She looked back at her brother. He was still crouched on the ground, his head down, refusing to look at the carriage as it disappeared into the distance. Good. She didn't see me. He knew he would have to face her eventually, but not now. Not like this. Helena watched him, her head tilted. Brother? Inside the speeding carriage, a woman with silver-white hair gently lifted the curtain. The world outside flew by. Ruins, smoke, police, panicking citizens. As her gaze swept over the scene, it snagged for a moment on a few civilians crouched by the side of the road. She frowned. There was something familiar about them, but the carriage was moving too fast. A second later, their small figures were gone. Your Highness, is something wrong? A lady-in-waiting asked softly. It's nothing, came the cool reply. Perhaps it was just her imagination. Your Highness, an attendant asked nervously. His Majesty has ordered you to return to the palace at once. With what has happened, it is far too dangerous to be out. Are you certain you still wish to go to that place? In the dim, rattling carriage, the attendant couldn't see the princess's face. The ensuing silence only made him more anxious. Their princess was a woman of few words, her personality cold and distant. But worse, her methods were ruthless, her motives unknowable, making every interaction with her feel like walking on thin ice. The silence stretched on. A bead of sweat trickled down the attendant's forehead. Just as he was about to break, her calm voice finally came. Take me to see my father. The attendant let out a breath he hadn't known he was holding. Yes, Your Highness, he said, careful to keep the relief out of his voice. The royal carriage slowed, turning at the next intersection. Oilia gazed out at the familiar streets of New Haven, a flicker of nostalgia in her eyes. It wasn't the city she missed. She hated this city. It was something else. In the darkness of the carriage, a small, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. I'm back. I'm back. Leo, covered in soot and grime, pushed open the front door. The sight of him nearly gave Evelyn a heart attack. What happened to you? She exclaimed. Weren't you supposed to be in class? Did the school get blown up? I wish, Leo muttered, glancing at her. Evelyn was lounging on the sofa in silk pajamas and slippers, a facial mask on, looking completely relaxed. Nice to see you're comfortable, he said with an eye roll. He collapsed onto the opposite end of the sofa and told her everything that had happened. She looked at him with disdain when he mentioned skipping class to go shopping with Helena, but her eyes went wide when he got to the new disappearances and the airship crash. That had nothing to do with me, she said, ripping off her face mask to plead her case. I know, Leo said, exhausted. This has escalated to the level of court politics. If it were you, things would actually be simpler. Is that how little you think of me? Evelyn crossed her arms, offended. You only caught me because you got lucky. Otherwise, those idiot cops would never have figured out in a million years. Leo shot her a tired look. How was that her takeaway from all this? Evelyn tapped her chin thoughtfully. So, you think this was an assassination attempt on the fifth princess? Palace intrigue. She frowned. There were so many wealthy nobles in that area. Why are you so sure the explosion was just to kill her? It just seems like too much of a coincidence, Leo mused. He couldn't rule out other targets, but for a disaster of this scale to happen on the very day the princess returned, it was hard not to connect the two. And there was another reason, one he couldn't tell Evelyn, that made him so certain. He was the player. Leo could see the quests. And since Oilia had arrived at the exact same time as this new disaster, he'd bet his life she was at the center of it. Mission complete. Chapter ended distributing mission rewards. Please check inventory mission log updated. Save point. The Sterling estate loads remaining. May 5th. Leo leaned back on the sofa, staring into space. To an outsider, he looked dazed, but he was really just reading the interface materializing in front of his eyes. The long, grueling first chapter was finally over. But the title of the second chapter, which had just popped up, sent a chill down his spine. The Wigner Terror. Wigner was the name of the empire, which meant that whatever was coming next was going to be an empire-wide affair. In short, things were about to get a whole lot bigger. Professor Evelyn was still lost in thought, puzzling over the bombing. Her fingers tapped together, eyes glancing upward as if running calculations in her head. Based on your description, assuming a blast radius of 1 kilometer and calculating the energy yield per cubic meter of Ethereum crystal, then the final result is 234.53 cubic meters of Ethereum crystal. She stared at Leo in shock. My God. Wow, Professor. You're amazing, Leo said dryly. Down to the decimal point. Very professional. This isn't a joke. The gravity of the situation finally hit her, and her expression turned serious. An explosion of that magnitude, just to eliminate the fifth princess? Isn't that like using a cannon to swat a fly? I know her security detail must be tight, but surely there were other ways. This has to be part of a bigger conspiracy, doesn't it? Leo nodded slowly. He'd been thinking the same thing. A move this big felt less like a simple assassination and more like an arrogant, taunting provocation. But with so little information, all he could do was wait and see how things developed. The serious topic cast a heavy mood over the room. Suddenly, Evelyn seemed to remember something. That monster of yours. She looked at Leo, carefully choosing her words. Your sister? Didn't you two come back together? Leo subtly glanced toward the half-open front door, which he'd left ajar on purpose. Outside, the darkness was absolute, the dim street lamps barely illuminating anything. There was no sign of Helena. She didn't want to come in. Evelyn followed his gaze and understood immediately. She let out a derisive laugh. Scared of being contained by you? Is she? Too afraid to even step inside. I thought she was supposed to be so powerful. Evelyn continued, her voice dripping with scorn. Looks like she's not all that, is she? Leo shot her a look. Lady, could you keep it down? She can definitely hear you. Not 3 seconds after Evelyn's taunt, a series of rapid footsteps echoed from the darkness outside, growing closer at an alarming speed. Leo's stomach tightened, and he whipped his head around. The door flew open, letting in a blast of cold night air. Helena stood in the doorway, her eyes smoldering. Meeting that gaze, Evelyn leaped to her feet, instantly on guard. A crimson blade of blood magic materialized in her palm as she locked eyes with the intruder. But she soon realized that for all Helena's dangerous, icy expression, she wasn't moving. She stood rooted to the spot, refusing to cross the threshold. Seeing this, Evelyn let out a snort of laughter. The tension drained from her body, and the blood-red dagger dissolved back into nothing. What's wrong? Just gonna stand there? Applying for a job as our new security guard. Helena's tentacles erupted violently from her back, her gaze turning murderous. What did you say? Our house. Helena's fists clenched so tight her knuckles turned white. If looks could kill, Evelyn would have been vaporized on the spot. Oh yes, I live here now. Evelyn purred, a wicked glint in her eye. She shot a suggestive wink at Leo. Your brother said so himself. I belong to him now. I'm his tenant. And you. She let a vicious smile curl her lips. Or not. This is my house. Helena roared, nearly lunging over the threshold in a fit of rage. Leo raised his hands, a pained and innocent look on his face. Guys, come on. Let's not do this. He shot a fierce glare at Evelyn, his eyes screaming. Could you please stop poking the bear? He made a subtle motion with his hand, threatening to use the confinement command. Evelyn blinked, her expression shifting to one of pure, sweet innocence. I'll just go continue my beauty regimen. You two siblings have a nice chat. As she turned away, however, the faintest trace of a smirk remained on her lips. Leo walked wearily to the door, preparing to placate the furious Helena. But before he could say a word, one of her tentacles shoved him aside as she glared past him at Evelyn's retreating form, her eyes scanning her from head to toe. You, why are you wearing my clothes? Who said you could touch my things? Evelyn paused and turned slightly. Well, I didn't have anything else to wear. A mischievous smile played on her lips as she looked back at Leo. You wouldn't want me running around naked with your brother, would you? Although, she added with a lilting, sing-song voice, I suppose I wouldn't mind. Professor, shut up, Leo snapped, waving his hand in exasperation. A soft groan came from behind him as black chains materialized around Evelyn. No, absolutely not. Helena was past caring about any of that. She was about to explode. You can live here, but you will not touch my things. I'm going to your house right now to get all your stupid clothes. You just wait. You just wait. With that, she vanished into the night. Once she was gone, Leo turned back toward the house. Umph. Evelyn muttered, rubbing her arm. As if I want to wear your clothes anyway. So flat-chested, nothing fits right. I looked everywhere, and this robe was the only thing I could even put on. Not even any underwear. Though I have to admit, going commando is surprisingly comfortable. Leo slammed the door shut, his heart pounding. It was a good thing Helena had disappeared so quickly. If she'd heard that last part, she might have gone completely berserk. In the administrative district of New Haven, the magnificent royal palace stood at the city's highest point. The palace was ablaze with light, servants hurrying down exquisite corridors lined with statues and massive oil paintings. Today marked the return of the long-absent fifth princess. Her arrival brought a rare bustle to the sprawling, often somber complex. But in contrast to the commotion outside, the princess's private chambers were perfectly silent. I told them not to make such a fuss. Does my father think I don't have enough trouble already? Even the normally taciturn princess found herself growing impatient with the palace's tedious formalities. Oilia frowned, her eyes flicking to a corner of the room. A black shadow materialized there in an instant, bowing respectfully. Oilia waved a hand dismissively. All the servants in the room, save for her most trusted attendants, bowed their heads and retreated. Did you find anything? The figure shook his head, his voice low. No trace of the third prince purchasing Ethereum crystals. The domestic mining records have been normal for years, and there have been no significant fluctuations in the energy market. Seeing the princess's impassive stare, the shadow guard quickly added, while we have no leads yet, it's possible the third prince made his purchases abroad or perhaps discovered a secret overseas deposit. Please, your highness, grant us more time. A flicker of light crossed Ophelia's pale blue eyes. He certainly is meticulous. Continue your investigation of the third prince, she commanded softly. You are dismissed. The guard nodded, but just as he was about to leave, he hesitated, looking back at the princess. Speak. It's about the old estate in the West End, your highness. Oilia froze. For the first time, a change came over her Ice Queen features. The shadow guard slowly approached, holding out a photograph. For years ago, her cadre of elite guards had been assigned a strange task: to maintain a 24-hour watch on an old house on Riverfront Road in the West End, a property belonging to the Evelyn family. Over the years, visitors had come and gone, but the person the princess was looking for, the family's heir, Leo Evelyn, had never appeared. Yet, as time passed, the princess's dedication to this task never wavered. It was only as her other plans demanded more resources that the surveillance had been scaled back. Then, a week ago, one of the guards performing a routine check noticed something. The shadow guard carefully handed the photograph to Oilia. The moment she saw it, her eyes changed. A deep, dark crimson flashed within them before vanishing just as quickly. The guard immediately lowered his head. Mr. Sterling has returned to the estate. We've been monitoring his activities and discovered he has re-enrolled at Blackwood Academy as a first-year Magitech major. He has also been in contact with an old acquaintance, Captain Raymond's of the East End Precinct, and is currently involved in the missing student's case. When you returned today, the shadow guard's voice dropped to a whisper. He was dining at the Royal Cove restaurant on Champagne Avenue in the East End at the same time. What? Ophelia's gaze snapped up from the photograph. That explosion. Was he? Her voice, usually so steady, trembled slightly. The guard spoke quickly. Mr. Sterling is unharmed, Your Highness. He has already returned to his estate. You need not worry. Oilia took a deep, steadying breath. A flicker of displeasure crossed her eyes. My apologies. I should have reported everything at once. The guard bowed his head even lower, a storm of shock raging within him. The princess, always so distant, so uninterested in the world, as cold and sharp as winter ice. When had she ever shown such emotion? Could the mere news of the target's return be enough to make her lose her composure? But the guard's greatest shock was yet to come, because Oilia smiled. It was like the first thaw of spring, the melting of a frozen river. When that face, the most exquisitely beautiful in the entire empire, bloomed into a smile, it was as if time itself had stopped. The guard didn't dare look a second longer. He shot a frantic glance at the other attendants. The maids, having never witnessed such a sight, were frozen in a daze. After a series of meaningful glares and raised eyebrows from the guard, they finally snapped out of it. Your Highness, if we may be excused. The guard and the maids fled the chamber as if their lives depended on it. The ornate doors swung silently shut. Oilia's focus returned to the photograph. It was a candid shot, taken from a poor angle. The black and white image showed little more than a blurry exterior wall of the old estate and an open window. But even so, it was enough. Through the window, Leo could be seen eating with a young woman slightly older than him. Both wore faint smiles, radiating a warmth that felt like family, or perhaps lovers. The hand holding the photo began to tremble. Her ice blue irises filled with that deep, dark crimson again, and this time it did not fade. He's back. He's back. Oilia's gaze was fixed on the handsome young man's face, silent and unmoving. She stared for a long, long time, a flood of indescribable emotions washing over her. He hadn't changed at all. It was as if she were back in that quiet countryside, back on that afternoon when the mysterious boy had snuck her out of the estate. That afternoon, there had been a blue sky, sprawling white clouds, cows in a barn, and 100 other new and wonderful things she had never seen before. She still remembered the taste of the pear they had stolen from a farmer's orchard. It was hard, sour, and had a worm in it that had nearly made her scream, earning a laugh from the boy. She had never tasted a pear like that again. She would never forget that day. It was the day she learned what kind of sky a free bird was meant to fly in. Leo. Oilia's pale fingertips gently traced the boy's face in the photograph. A wave of regret washed over her. She shouldn't have let other, less important matters distract her from the estate. Day after day, night after night, no one knew how much effort she had poured into a single, ethereal hope. She had even orchestrated the financial ruin of a wealthy merchant who had dared to covet the property. That place was full of memories. All the beauty in her short life was contained within its walls. It was not to be desecrated. And yet, a single moment of carelessness, and she hadn't been the first to know of his return. It was all the third prince's fault, her so-called brother. A cold smile touched Oilia's lips. She shouldn't waste time on such pointless thoughts. They only brought frustration. Her eyes returned to the figure in the photo. Her gaze never once lingered on the strange woman beside him, because she had always known that old estate had only one mistress, and it was her. On Tuesday, the moment Leo stepped into the classroom, he was met with a low hum of discussion. Shock and disbelief were written on every student's face. They were all talking about yesterday's massive explosion. The fallout from the bombing was far greater than anyone had imagined. It wasn't just on the front page of every morning paper. As public opinion festered, a new consequence emerged, one that gave the authorities a massive headache, a pervasive fear of public transportation. People across New Haven, and even in other major cities, were terrified that any vehicle powered by Magitech would spontaneously explode. Many students were late to class for that very reason. Their parents, too afraid to let them take the commuter buses, had sent them by horse-drawn carriage or simply made them walk. Leo listened to their hushed conversations, a slight frown on his face. He felt like he was grasping at something unusual, a thread he couldn't quite pull. He sat lost in thought for a moment before greeting Chloe as she arrived. He then scanned the room. The transfer student, Tina, was hunched over her desk, furiously writing something. Curious, Leo walked over. Helena still had yesterday's notebook. She was resting her chin on her hand, her expression one of intense concentration. She was so focused, she didn't even notice him approach. Leo snuck a peek. Go to school with brother heavy checkmark, give brother a gift heavy checkmark, go shopping with brother heavy checkmark, go on a date with brother. Eat cream of mushroom soup and seafood pasta with brother. He instinctively recalled the promise he'd made to her in the basement, to let her experience the life a girl her age deserved, to help her fulfill the wishes she'd never had a chance to. She had taken every word to heart. A sense of relief washed over Leo as he watched the girl scribbling away. The Helena of today was different, better. She was slowly becoming the sweet, well-behaved little sister he'd always imagined. It was nice. Brother, what are you looking at? His spying was finally discovered. Helena slammed the notebook shut, her cheeks instantly flushing a deep red. She pouted. Why are you looking at my things? What did you see? Huh? Leo blinked. I didn't see anything. She eyed him suspiciously. You really didn't see? Leo nodded. I just glanced over. You covered it up before I could read a word. Helena huffed and tucked the notebook away. Then she propped her chin on her hand and turned her head, pointedly ignoring him. Leo chuckled to himself. For a second there, he'd felt like a parent caught reading their kid's diary. He smiled and changed the subject. So, how long are you planning on using this Tina identity? Helena finally turned back to him. Leo looked at her seriously. If she wasn't done playing this game, it could become a real problem. The entire city was on high alert because of the airship bombing, with police from all over the country being brought into New Haven to conduct door-to-door searches. The fact that she had kidnapped the real Tina was bound to come out sooner or later. Her blue eyes darted back and forth. There's one more thing. Walking home from school with my brother. So, Helena will give Tina her identity back tomorrow. Good. Leo breathed a sigh of relief. By the way, brother, what is it? Helena stared at him, her expression dead serious. Can you kill that woman in our house? Huh? Leo froze. He looked closely at Helena. She was staring at him without blinking. She was serious. Well, Leo hesitated. It's not that simple. There's a lot involved. Helena buried her face in her arms, her voice muffled. Whenever you say, it's not that simple, you're definitely lying to me. I hate it when you lie to me. Leo sighed, setting aside the fact that he'd spent a lot of time with Professor Evelyn and wasn't sure he could bring himself to do it. If he actually went through with it, the disappearance of a contained anomaly would mean the disappearance of his powers. For someone who craved that power as much as he did, that was unacceptable. For both practical and personal reasons, he couldn't agree. And so, Helena was angry. After school, she trailed behind him on the way home, fuming silently. When they got off the bus and stood in front of the old estate, the cloud of resentment hanging over her hadn't dissipated in the slightest. Leo managed a weary smile. We're home. Aren't you going to come in for a bite to eat? He'd hoped to lure her inside, but when he turned around, she was gone. She's fast, Leo muttered, watching a dark shadow dart into a nearby alley. She was terrified of this house. Now that the sanctuary was active again, she would probably never willingly set foot inside. But he didn't want to use the same crude methods on this new Helena as he did with Evelyn. It was a real headache. His headache only got worse when he opened the front door. A thick, acrid smoke billowed out of the living room, hitting him square in the face. He coughed, waving a hand in front of him as he looked toward the source. He'd assumed Evelyn was up to some new scheme, maybe trying to burn the house down to escape, but when his eyes adjusted, he saw she was in the kitchen, cooking. For God's sake, what are you doing? Leo rushed over. Evelyn, her face smudged with soot, gave him an awkward smile. You always come home so late. I was starving. I saw some food in the cabinet and thought I'd give it a try. She awkwardly brushed a stray lock of messy hair from her face. I had no idea. Your human food looks so simple, but it's actually really hard to make. Leo's eyes swept over the smoke-filled kitchen, the chaotic mess of pots and pans, and finally landed on the skillet in her hand. His eyes widened in horror. What is that? Evelyn grinned sheepishly. It's a steak. Leo stared at the blackened, carbonized lump. Did you use any oil? I don't know. Evelyn said, looking troubled. After it turned black, I remembered that you're supposed to use oil, so I added some. But then the fire just got bigger. Professor, please just stay out of my kitchen. Leo sighed, pressing his fingers to his forehead. What a mess. Ever since Evelyn had gained a human sense of taste, it was like a whole new world had opened up for her. Every day, she pestered him to try new things, to buy her all sorts of different foods. This was supposed to be a good thing. It was part of his plan, after all. He didn't exactly want to come home every day to the resentful glare of a jilted ghost. But he never imagined that a bloodkin aristocrat who'd never lifted a finger in her life, an anomaly who had only just learned to eat human food, would dare to attempt a skill as advanced as cooking. He'd clearly overestimated her. Leo snatched the pan from her hand and killed the flame on the stove. He crossed his arms and stared at her. Evelyn mumbled, rubbing her stomach. Hungry. Leo shot her an exasperated look. You've destroyed the kitchen. What are we supposed to eat now? Evelyn looked at him with pleading eyes. Hungry. Finally, Leo let out a long, defeated sigh. Fine, let's go out. With that, Leo walked to the door and put on his coat. Behind him, Evelyn stood frozen. I can go outside. Leo glanced at her and issued a silent command to the sanctuary. The front door of the estate shimmered with a faint light. Restriction lifted free, combat mode. Enabled. Evelyn blinked, a look of disbelief spreading across her face. You're letting me out? Leo met her gaze and gave a simple nod. Evelyn's joy was instantaneous. Like a cat, she darted from the kitchen, a blur of red and black that appeared at the doorway in a flash. Then she stopped, a flicker of suspicion in her eyes. Wait a minute. You're just letting me go. I'm free. Aren't you afraid? I'll go find my family and come back for revenge. With your level of power, you'd be obliterated in an instant. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. Something was off. 99% off. This had to be a trap. Seeing that she was actually resisting the temptation to leave, Leo couldn't help but smile. Professor, are you always this paranoid? Evelyn snorted, her mind racing. She remembered the black chains that would appear on her wrists whenever he issued a command, the searing pain as they tightened, the faint, mocking smile on his face. This couldn't be that simple. You're too devious to let me go this easily. You must be planning something. Seeing her suspicious expression, Leo just shrugged. If you don't believe me, then I'm leaving. You can stay here and starve. I'm going to get dinner. He turned and walked out the door, leaving a stunned Evelyn behind. Huh, hey wait, you. Leo didn't close the door. Evelyn stared at the open doorway, her eyes darting back and forth. He's definitely tricking me. It has to be a trap. I'm not falling for it. As she muttered to herself, her stomach let out an embarrassingly loud growl. Her face fell, all her resolve shattered by hunger. Maybe, just for a little while, it would be a good chance to test what he's really up to. A flash of crimson, and she was out the door, hurrying to catch up to Leo's retreating figure. Leo, don't you dare eat without me. I'm coming too. Leo hid a smile as he watched her trot to catch up. Said you wouldn't, but your body is pretty honest, isn't it? After wandering the streets for a bit, Leo led Evelyn to a small tavern not far from the estate. It served food, and at this hour, it was filled with city workers just getting off their shifts. The aroma wafting from inside made Evelyn's stomach growl even louder. She saw Leo's teasing glance and looked down, embarrassed. Let's not just stand here. Let's go in. Leo nodded, just as he was about to push the door open. A resentful voice drifted from the alley beside the tavern. Brother, where are you two going? They both turned to see Helena hidden in the darkness of the alley, her eyes fixed on Leo. You scared me. Leo clutched his chest. So she hadn't gone far. She must have been following him. The kitchen's out of commission, so I'm getting dinner. Oh, Helena slowly emerged from the shadows, tilting her head curiously. Isn't this woman a vampire? Why do you have to bring her along to eat? You two seem to be getting along quite well. A faint hint of killing intent made Evelyn tense up, her blood magic ready to lash out. Wait, Leo quickly explained why he'd brought Evelyn with him. But Evelyn just snorted. Do you have to report your every move to her? Is she your sister, your girlfriend, or your mother? Leo shot her a tired look. Lady, please do not add fuel to the fire. Did you eat a bomb for breakfast? Why are you so aggressive? Evelyn glanced at Leo, crossed her arms, and finally fell silent. Watching the subtle expressions pass between them, though neither looked particularly happy, Helena could feel a strange sense of intimacy hanging in the air. Her gaze turned even darker. So, brother is on a date. Am I interrupting? Not all. Leo forced a wide grin, ignoring Helena's resistance. He grabbed her arm and pulled her over. You're right on time. He positioned Helena on his right, with Evelyn on his left. Helena looked distinctly unhappy, especially being so close to Evelyn. Evelyn, for her part, just blinked, surprised at Leo's audacity. He wouldn't have dared before, but now, ever since he'd acquired the Bloodkin's insane regenerative abilities, his confidence, or arrogance, had skyrocketed. In the past, he wouldn't have dared to say a single wrong word to Helena. Not to mention, he still had unclaimed rewards from completing the first chapter. This was the confidence that supernatural power gave him. I, Leo Sterling, do not fear this minefield. Helena hasn't eaten either, right? Let's all eat together, he said with a smile. After a moment of holding her hand tightly, making it clear he wasn't letting go, Helena finally gave up her struggle. Fine. Together, she mumbled, turning her head away. And so, the three of them, each with a very different expression, sat down at a corner table. Leo, order this for me. I want that. And that one too. Evelyn pointed imperiously at the menu, showing no restraint. Helena rested her chin on her hand, glaring daggers at her. Leo sat between them, a one-man peacekeeping force, too busy monitoring their expressions to eat a single bite, terrified they'd start a brawl over a piece of fried fish. This cozy atmosphere lasted until the sound of hoofbeats echoed from outside. The sound was heavy and powerful, fast, well-bred horses, and a lot of them. The tavern fell silent. The three of them looked up. Several black carriages had pulled up in front of the small tavern. A group of mysterious men in long black coats disembarked, crowding the narrow entrance. They weren't visibly armed, but they radiated a palpable sense of danger, even more intense than the BSI agents he'd met before. Leo's brow furrowed. The man in the lead pushed open the door and walked straight to their table. Mr. Leo Sterling, Her Highness requests your presence. Her Highness? Evelyn looked at Leo, confused. Which Highness? There are only a handful of people in the Empire who could be addressed that way. How was Leo involved with any of them? And this crew that had just shown up was clearly serious business. The leader, though his features were plain and unremarkable, radiated an intense, dangerous aura. He was strong. Evelyn grew more and more curious. Just what kind of trouble had Leo gotten himself into? Under the tavern's collective stare, Leo's expression remained neutral. He calmly set down his fork and looked up at the man. Can't it wait? We haven't finished eating. Getting his sister and his professor to eat together was a once-in-a-lifetime event, and these guys had to ruin it. The man smiled. Mr. Sterling, Her Highness has already prepared a magnificent banquet for you. You need not worry. The smile was sincere, but his eyes held a look that tolerated no refusal. Leo stared back, expressionless, but sighed internally. What's coming is coming. There's no dodging Oilia. Just as he slowly stood up to go with them, Helena slammed her fist on the table and stood in front of him. You're not taking my brother. Everyone looked at her. Her shoulders and arms were trembling violently. Her eyes, fearless, were locked on the man in black, her tentacles seemingly ready to erupt at any moment. At the sight, all the men tensed, their hands moving to weapons hidden beneath their coats. One more move from her, and they would all attack. Helena! Leo reached out to stop her, but it was too late. The moment the leader saw Helena move to block their way, he unleashed a burst of power. Leo didn't even see him move. A wave of force slapped against his cheek, and Helena staggered back with a grunt of pain. Don't touch my sister. Leo shot the man a cold glare and steadied Helena. Her agitation was growing. Leo was worried she would transform right there in the tavern and be instantly swarmed. Oilia's people were not to be trifled with. Miss, Her Highness's orders cannot be disobeyed, the man in black warned. Leo ignored him, turning to Helena. I'm just going out for a little while. You wait for me at home, okay? I'll be back soon. Ignoring her struggles, he gave Evelyn a quick, meaningful look. Professor, take care of my sister for me. Then, without looking back, he followed the men out of the tavern. I don't need her to take care of me, brother. Helena's cries followed him, but she was pulled back by Evelyn. Don't be reckless. Those guys, they're even more dangerous than the BSI agents. Evelyn watched their retreating figures with a wary eye. People like us. We shouldn't be causing trouble for Leo. As she said it, she remembered the look Leo had given her before he left. There was something more to it. No wonder he'd suddenly let her out. Had he known this was going to happen? Inside the dark carriage, the man placed a black, opaque blindfold over Leo's eyes. My apologies, Mr. Sterling. Staring into the total darkness, Leo let out a cold laugh. Where exactly are you taking me? Is all this secrecy really necessary? He was met with silence. The man said nothing more. The carriage lurched into motion, speeding off in some unknown direction. Though he couldn't see, Leo's familiarity with the streets of New Haven allowed him to sense that they were heading out of the city. The smooth ride of the city's paved roads gave way to a bumpy, uneven path. Leo silently counted the time. After about 3 hours of driving in silence, the carriage finally slowed to a stop. The blindfold was removed. The sudden light made him squint. Mr. Sterling, please follow me. Stepping out of the carriage, Leo was surprised to find himself at a countryside estate at dusk. He looked out at endless fields of farmland, a windmill turning slowly in the distance. The chirping of crickets filled the air along the country lane. A gentle breeze swept by, and Leo took a deep breath. The air here was clean and refreshing, nothing like the smog of New Haven. He looked around, his eyes landing on the nearby manor. He froze. It wasn't the beauty of the pastoral scenery that stunned him. It was the fact that he'd been here before. This was the same country estate where he had first met Oilia during his first playthrough. She brought him back here. Leo followed the man in black, his eyes scanning the surroundings. The more he looked, the more he realized something was wrong. The original estate wasn't on the outskirts of New Haven. It was in the countryside near a completely different city. So how could this place be an identical replica? Unless, when a man pushed open the doors and let him inside, Leo's suspicions were confirmed. The interior was exquisitely decorated, but there were subtle differences from his memory. The layout and furnishings were the same, but everything felt newer, lacking the heavy, aged feeling of a royal estate that had been neglected for years. This meant everything here, from the fields to the manor, every brick, every blade of grass, had been meticulously replicated by Oilia. A profound sense of shock washed over Leo. What kind of obsession was this? To recreate every last detail. How much must she miss her time at that old estate? To build an identical copy on the expensive outskirts of New Haven. But mixed with the shock was a growing sense of dread, a fear of the unknown. He had no idea what Oilia was planning. As a princess of the Empire, she was the most powerful and strong-willed of them all. This manor proved her obsession was just as strong as Helena's, and given her power and status, she was, in some ways, far more dangerous. Your Highness, Mr. Sterling has arrived. After speaking, the man in black nodded to Leo and quietly left the dining room. Save point. Oilia's estate loads remaining. May 5th, seeing the save point notification pop up, Leo took a deep breath, steeling himself. He slowly pushed open the doors. The first thing he saw was a long dining table draped in a beautifully patterned tablecloth, the flames of ornate candelabras flickering gently. The mistress of the estate turned to face him with a smile. Dusk was fading. In the deepening night, a sliver of moonlight spilled through the stained glass windows, illuminating her porcelain-like skin and breathtaking beauty. Leo, she smiled as she approached, her silver-white hair, like liquid moonlight, flowing around her. Leo met her gaze and offered a smile of his own. Oilia, it's been a long time, like old friends reuniting after years apart. Oilia opened her arms and gently embraced him. It has been a long time, she murmured. Her face, usually so cold to the outside world, broke into a sly smile, one befitting a girl her age. It's been 4 years. Did you miss me? Leo returned the embrace. Of course I did. Really? Oilia pulled back, her eyes tinged with suspicion. You were gone for 4 years, and the first thing you did when you came back wasn't to find me. It doesn't seem like you miss me that much. Well, Leo began to explain, I had a lot to deal with. I was planning to come see you after I took care of. I don't like liars. Her voice was suddenly cold. Oilia's smile vanished, and she placed a hand gently on his chest. Don't try to deceive me, because I know what you're thinking. Leo blinked, his own smile turning innocent. Seriously? He thought. He didn't remember Oilia having a mind-reading ability. As they looked at each other, her character information appeared before him. Oilia race, unknown affinity, 100 corruption level, 15 description, lingers on her past with you, dreams of her future with you. The information was incomplete. No last name, no race, no attributes. It was because she was no longer in a contained state, just like when he'd first met Helena after crossing over. But he knew better now. He wasn't about to believe she was as harmless as that initial description suggested. Her race was something else entirely. With Oilia, he had to be on his highest guard. All right, if you have your reasons, I won't press you, Oilia said, her faint smile returning. She took his hand and led him to the table. You haven't eaten, have you? They're preparing everything in the kitchen. All your old favorites from the estate. Leo nodded with a polite smile. Thank you. Don't be so formal with me. Oilia's eyebrows arched slightly. Everything here was prepared for you. She gestured around the room, then looked out the window. After my father granted me some authority, I had planned to buy that village. But unfortunately, she shook her head with a sigh. It's all factories now. Choking smog and polluted water everywhere. Our beautiful memories have been completely erased by the reckless expansion of Magitech industry. But fortunately, everything here, the ground you stand on, is an exact replica of the estate where we first met. Even the surrounding scenery is a one-to-one recreation. Oilia's eyes shone as she looked at him, her smile returning. Do you like it? Of course I do, Leo said with a grin. In this situation, how could he say anything else? The moment the words left his mouth, Oilia corruption plus 1 corruption plus 1 corruption plus 1. Leo froze. Ophelia's expression hadn't changed. The same gentle, serene smile was fixed on her face. But her corruption level was climbing, and it wouldn't stop. She can actually read my mind? Leo stared at Ophelia's smiling face, a storm of horror raging inside him. If she could really see into his thoughts, then every scheme, every plan, every single negative thing he thought about her, she would know it all. He'd be completely exposed. He'd never entertained the idea of beating her in a fight. His only weapon was his wit, his ability to talk his way out of things. If that was gone, just then, several expressionless maids entered, carrying an assortment of dishes. As they placed the exquisite food on the table, Ophelia smiled at Leo. Leo, I recommend you try the foie gras first. Oh, Leo raised an eyebrow, feigning excitement. This is one of the Empire's most historic dishes, she explained, her gaze shifting to him as she used a fork to place a piece on his plate. From the origin of the ingredients to the complex preparation and the finest truffle pairings, every element is key to its rich flavor. Try it. At her recommendation, Leo smiled, nodded, and eagerly took a bite. It's my favorite dish as well. What do you think? She asked, her eyes full of expectation. Leo frowned, savoring the taste. It's quite good. It's disgusting, he thought. Fatty, greasy, with a weird gamey taste. I'd rather have a bacon cheeseburger. But faced with her hopeful gaze, he had no choice but to lie. And as soon as he did, Ophelia corruption plus 5 corruption level, 23. Leo's confusion deepened. She really can read minds? She had said she didn't like liars. If she was angry because she'd caught him in a lie, that would make sense. But he quickly changed his answer. Actually, it's not that great. A little too rich for me. Corruption plus 10 corruption level, 33. Leo's eyes widened. Her corruption level had just jumped again. What was wrong with her? He hadn't lied that time. Good was wrong. Bad was wrong. Why did everything he said make her angry? If you don't like it, we'll have it taken away. Ophelia's face showed no discernible emotion. She glanced toward the door, and a maid immediately came to remove the foie gras. The increasingly bizarre, candlelit dinner continued. Staring at the beautiful face so close to him, Leo's heart pounded. Her corruption level had shot up so fast in such a short time. What would happen if it maxed out? The most unsettling part was how normal she was acting, always a poised expression with the occasional gentle smile directed at him. But it was that very normalcy that filled him with a creeping dread. His body tensed instinctively. Then, Leo, why are you sitting so far away? Are you afraid of me? Ophelia asked with a light laugh, pouring him a glass of red wine. This time, Leo said nothing. Corruption plus 5. He was numb. He suddenly realized it wasn't that Ophelia disliked him lying to her. She disliked him having any thought that went against her will. Even eating something, he had to genuinely, in his heart of hearts, enjoy it exactly as she intended. Her need for control was insane. A toast to our reunion. Leo forced a huge smile, looking at Ophelia, who had practically glued her chair to his and was scrutinizing his every move. With a sense of fatalistic abandon, he silently thought, "Idiot." After thinking it, he quickly glanced at her stats. No change. A wave of relief washed over him. He downed a glass of wine in one gulp. It wasn't mind reading. It was some kind of ability to detect the subtle emotional tells in his speech and body language. The counter-strategy was simple. Keep his mouth shut. It made sense. As weird as this world was, an ability as overpowered as true mind reading was unlikely to just appear. That was the domain of gods or cosmic horrors that could dominate minds with ease. During the meal, Ophelia began to talk about the past. Back then, I must have been the most pitiful member of the royal family. My father left me out in the country since I was a child. I'd be lucky to see him once a year. I heard everyone was afraid of me. I suppose it makes sense. It was rare for Ophelia to be so candid. Now that she was with the person she had longed for, the words just poured out. I was the cause of my mother's death, and whenever I had an episode, I would turn into that. They were all afraid of me. The servants, my brothers and sisters. Even my father was so cold to me. She leaned against him, her silver hair spilling onto his shoulder. If you hadn't appeared, I probably would have been locked up in that estate forever, like a bird without wings. Ophelia rested her head on his shoulder, speaking in a soft, rambling voice. Leo listened intently. He knew from the game that Ophelia wasn't really the emotionless, white-haired girl she appeared to be. She was actually quite lively. At least, on the afternoon he had picked the lock and snuck her out, she had finally let her true nature show. She had pretended to be a commoner girl, full of curiosity about everything around her. She'd ask about this and that, and even wanted to help the farmers in the muddy fields. She ended up covered in mud, rolling around happily, and he couldn't stop her. As she spoke of this, a smile bloomed on her lips. Later, my father found out we had snuck out. He was furious, but to my surprise, he actually asked me about it. It was so rare. From that day on, Oilia gained a precious bit of freedom. She could visit Leo at the old estate and even join him on his strange investigations. It was a rare, beautiful time. Until, why did you leave 4 years ago? Do you have any idea how sad I was? Her moonlight silver hair shifted as she looked up, her normally pale blue eyes fixed intently on him. All this time, he had just been listening and nodding along. But now, it was his turn to speak. Faced with her questioning gaze, Leo spoke slowly. Because of that final case in Blackwater with the cult, I was badly injured. I had to recuperate overseas. This was the official, canonical answer, designed for the game's second playthrough. But Oilia didn't seem to care about his excuses. Her pale blue eyes were locked on his, unblinking. But that last time, why didn't you take me with you? It was too dangerous, Leo said. Dangerous? Oilia shot up from his embrace, her smiling face instantly turning into a mask of indifference. Because it was dangerous, you took other women? Are they stronger than me? It's not like that. It is. It's exactly like that. Oilia's gaze grew colder. Her, especially that gloomy one. Ever since you met her, your eyes have always been on her. You gave her all the best mysterious artifacts you found, not me. Leo felt a surge of helplessness. He was just trying to beat the game. It was common sense to give the best equipment to the strongest characters, right? Besides, Oilia was a pampered princess. If he dragged her into fights, did she think the old king would let him get away with it? You never cared about me. Oilia's eyes began to glow with a faint, dark crimson. Not then, and not now. You were gone for 4 years, and the first person you thought of when you came back wasn't me. It was your tentacle monster sister, and she slapped a dimly lit photograph onto the table. Who is this woman? Leo stared at the photo in shock. It was him and Evelyn, eating together. And what was worse, they both had warm, gentle smiles on their faces. He didn't remember being on such good terms with the vampire professor last week. Back then, she'd wanted to kill him. I can't take my eyes off you for 1 second before you're out seducing another woman. The dark crimson in her eyes deepened as she stared into his. A cold, sinister aura began to fill the dining room. Corruption plus 5 corruption plus 5 corruption plus 5. Leo watched her nervously, terrified that with her corruption rising so fast, she would suddenly snap and kill him. But she seemed to fall into a reverie. You were always like that, saying all those sweet things, and before I knew it, you'd pried open the heart of a lonely girl. She seemed to be lost in a memory, a faint blush creeping up her pale cheeks. Then her tone shifted, and as soon as you said them, you ran off to find other women. She leaned in close, her face expressionless, the crimson in her eyes glowing dangerously. I bet you said the same things to them, didn't you? You must have. You must have. Leo managed an awkward, innocent smile and silently began cutting his steak. He didn't dare say a word. No matter what he said, it would only make her more agitated. But Oilia wasn't going to let him off that easily. She slammed her hand down on his, stopping the knife, and then snatched it from his grasp. Leo's heart leaped into his throat. Seeing his expression, Oilia spoke in a low, haunting voice. But fortunately, there is a solution. Leo looked up in surprise. A solution? Oilia toyed with the steak knife, a cruel smile slowly spreading across her beautiful, cold face. You look so concerned. You don't want them to die, do you? Leo fought to keep his expression neutral. He didn't answer, just stared at the steak on his plate. The knife gently grazed his fingers before she pushed it back into his hand. Don't just eat the steak. Try some of the other dishes. See if they're better than what you had with Helena at the Royal Cove restaurant. Her tone was laced with sarcasm. Leo could only nod, his palms sweating. Faced with this woman who could read his emotions and had an iron grip of control, even speaking was a mistake. Silence was his only option. Seeing him behave, obediently listening to her, Oilia's happy smile returned, like ice melting in the spring. Aren't you curious about my solution? She whispered, leaning close to his ear. Her silver hair tickled his neck. My solution is very simple. Leo looked at her. Oilia smiled faintly. As long as you live here with me, and don't think about escaping, that pair of cats and dogs you keep at your house won't die. I won't even kick them out. Leo blinked. Cats and dogs? Who's the cat? Who's the dog? Oilia smiled, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. After all, I am the mistress of that house, am I not? Just live here? That's it, Leo asked, skeptical. Of course. Oilia nodded seriously. As long as you stay here with me, for a month? Oh, 2 weeks will do. I won't interfere in your life ever again. Leo's eyes widened in disbelief. That was it. Just stay with her at this country estate for a couple of weeks, and all his problems will be solved? It couldn't be that simple. As if reading his thoughts, she added with a sweet smile, It's true. I keep my word. After that, I would even be willing to live with you in that strange old house of yours. But, Leo thought but didn't say it. The estate had the power of containment. It was the source of his strength. After all her threats, did she really have the guts to live there? He frowned, looking at her beautiful face flickering in the candlelight. There had to be a catch, a big one, but he had too few clues to figure out. I accept, Leo said, nodding. If you want to find out what game Oilia was playing, he had no choice but to play along. I know what you're thinking, she sang, fluttering like a butterfly to his other side. Since we have an agreement, I should tell you the rules of the estate. She held up one finger. 1. Do not try to leave the grounds of this estate. Of course, you can't escape anyway, but if you even try, there will be a punishment. 2. A second finger went up. Do not make me angry. Be a good boy and listen to me. Otherwise, there will be a punishment. And 3. Oilia looked him straight in the eye, her expression turning deadly serious as she raised a third finger. The punishment I speak of is death. Even though I care for you very much, it is a death I cannot prevent. A true death, the worst possible outcome for both of us. She asked softly, Do you understand? Outside the estate, the night grew deeper. The tense candlelit dinner, which had put Leo's nerves on edge, finally came to an end. Maids filed in to clear the table as Oilia walked over to him. She gave him a brief, farewell-like hug. I have some matters to attend to. It's getting late. You should go to bed. Matters to attend to, Leo asked instinctively. Oilia nodded, complaining slightly. Since returning to the palace, my father has given me a lot of responsibilities. It's my first time handling them, so it's a bit overwhelming. That's a good thing, Leo said with a smile. Oilia had been kept out of the public eye for years, a mysterious figure so obscure that many citizens didn't even know a fifth princess existed. Her older siblings, however, all held some measure of power. So it was indeed a good thing that her father was finally starting to pay attention to her. Oilia smiled back. If you need anything, you can ask the servants here. But she fixed her eyes on his. Remember what I told you. Don't go wandering off. Leo thought of the 3 estate rules she had laid out and nodded silently. Well then, Oilia released him from the hug, her gaze lingering on him, reluctant to let go. But as her eyes drifted downwards, she suddenly froze. She'd seen something that displeased her. What is this? She touched the plaid cravat around his neck, her brow furrowing. Did Helena give this to you? Leo wanted to say he'd bought it himself, but he knew he couldn't lie to her. Yes. Oilia snorted. She ripped the cravat from his neck. Don't wear something so tasteless. Ignoring his expression, she folded the cravat Helena had given him and tossed it aside. What? She asked, raising an eyebrow. Judging by your look, are you sad to lose a gift from your little sister? Leo shrugged internally. It wasn't that he was attached to it, but more that. Are all the gifts my sister and I exchanged cursed? Neither the teddy bear he'd given her nor the cravat she'd given him had survived more than 3 days. As he was thinking this, Oilia crossed her arms and looked him up and down, a cold, mocking smile on her face. From now on, I'll be choosing your clothes. I want my man to be an elegant, well-dressed gentleman, dressed in nothing but the best. Not someone who looks like some new money industrialist trying too hard to look fashionable. Her expression grew more and more disdainful as she looked at his outfit. Get rid of these clothes later. I don't want to see you with the same thing twice. With that, she turned and walked away. Corruption +1, corruption +1. After Oilia left, Leo let out a helpless sigh. Fine. After losing his freedom to eat what he wanted, he now lost his freedom to dress himself. A silent maid led him back to his room. On the bed, he saw the new clothes Oilia had mentioned. It was a 3-piece suit, jacket, trousers, and waistcoat. It was certainly more formal and tasteful than what he usually wore, and he could tell from the feel of the fabric that it was incredibly expensive, the kind of suit that would cost Professor Evelyn a month's salary. Beside it lay an exquisite pocket watch. He checked the time, 10 o'clock at night. He put the clothes away and sat on the soft bed, staring out the window. Ophelia's words echoed in his mind. Follow the rules, or the punishment is death. A wry smile touched Leo's lips. Follow the rules? Screw that. What's the point of having extra lives if you don't use them for trial and error? He immediately opened his system panel. The system rewards he'd been ignoring for so long finally appeared before him. A notification shimmered in Leo's vision, a welcome distraction he'd saved for a moment just like this. The time had come. You may select one of the following random items. 1. Eye of Insight. Accessory. When worn, dramatically increases insight and enhances perception of supernatural phenomena. 2. High-caliber alchemical rifle. Weapon. Holds a 7-round clip of alchemical ammunition. Highly effective at disrupting low-level anomalous entities without a moment's hesitation. Leo dumped his earned points into agility. Agility plus 10 stats. Strength. 32. Constitution. 25. Agility. 48. Charisma. 100. Insight. 49. Sanity. 45. Pushing any stat toward the 50-point threshold felt like a quantum leap. The surge of agility made his body feel weightless, almost ethereal. He pulled his door open, the latch making no sound, and slipped out of his room like a ghost. The estate was unnervingly quiet at night. Leo moved on the balls of his feet, a shadow gliding through the long, cavernous hallways. He felt a strange vibe from this place since he'd arrived, and now he finally had the chance to investigate. The further he went, the stronger the feeling of wrongness became. He scanned his surroundings. Every room was dark, the entire estate steeped in a silence as profound as the grave. But he was sure he'd seen at least a dozen maids earlier. Where had they all gone? Growing more puzzled, he cautiously pushed open a random door. The room was empty, spotless, but with no signs of life, as if it had been meticulously cleaned and then abandoned. He checked another, and then another. It was the same story for every room on the floor. To keep an estate this size, so immaculate, would require a small army of servants working around the clock. Yet, as he explored, a startling realization dawned on him. All the rooms were empty, and not a single one had a light on. A cold unease began to spread through his chest. How is this possible? A maid just showed me to my room not long ago. How could they all have vanished in the blink of an eye? A cool draft whispered down the hall, raising goosebumps on his arms. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. Leo quickly retraced his steps to his own floor and followed the corridor to Ophelia's room. Besides his own, it was the only one with a light on, a sliver of gold spilling from beneath the door. He took a deep breath and knocked softly. Silence. He frowned and knocked again, a little louder this time. Still no answer. "Ophelia," he called out, his voice low. "Are you in there? I need to talk to you." When the silence persisted, he gripped the cold brass handle, turned it, and pushed the door open. Inside, a bright gas lamp illuminated a large desk scattered with what looked like ledgers and reports. But Ophelia was gone. Leo picked up one of the documents. It was a tax report for her land holdings, likely an assignment from the old emperor. The questions in his mind multiplied. Not only had the maids disappeared, but now Ophelia was missing too. Was he truly the only person left in this sprawling mansion? Weren't they afraid he'd just walk out? On instinct, he spoke to the empty air. "If you don't show yourself, I'm leaving. I'm going home." He waited a beat. "Come on out. Stop trying to scare me. It's not going to work." The only response was the suffocating silence. His suspicion mounting, Leo decided to leave. He set the papers back on the desk and turned toward the door. And that's when he heard it. In the dead quiet of the empty office, a grotesque, wet, slithering sound echoed from somewhere nearby. The sound was so sudden, so alien, that Leo flinched, his body reacting on pure instinct. A blade of shimmering crimson energy, his crimson edge, materialized in his hand. He focused his blood magic, his eyes darting around the room, senses on high alert. The office was just as it had been a moment before, brightly lit, spacious, and utterly empty. The sound vanished as quickly as it had come, like a phantom of his imagination. But Leo knew, with absolute certainty, that it hadn't been a hallucination. He had heard a thick, viscous, squirming noise right here in this room. Refusing to believe his senses were playing tricks on him, he began a more thorough search of Ophelia's office. But the room was simple, with nowhere to hide anything of consequence. He even suspected a secret passage, knocking along the walls, but found no hollow spaces. The bizarre situation made his heart pound in his chest. Ophelia, what the hell is she playing at? He gave the room one last, long look, then turned and walked out without a backward glance. The estate remained deathly still. Leo looked out a large window toward the grounds. A bright moon cast a silvery sheen over the vast wheat fields, and a gentle breeze made the stalks whisper. It should have been a peaceful, beautiful scene. But after what had just happened, Everything felt tainted with a creeping, insidious dread. He strode to the main doors of the estate and pulled one open, determined to get some air. At that exact moment, an expressionless maid materialized directly in his path. "Jesus!" Leo swore, stumbling back a step. "Mr. Sterling," the maid said, and it was the first time he'd heard one of them speak. Her voice was a low, gravelly rasp that sounded utterly inhuman. "Her Highness has instructed that you are not to go outside." "Where's Oilia? Where did she go?" Leo demanded. The maid didn't answer. "And the rest of you? Don't you live in the estate?" he pressed. Still no response. Done with the silent treatment, Leo ignored her and pushed past, stepping out into the cold night air that rushed in to meet him. He started down the path leading toward the fields. "Mr. Sterling, Her Highness has instructed that you are not to go outside." Like a phantom, the maid was in front of him again, blocking his way. "I've had too much to drink, and I need to take a piss. Are you going to stop me from doing that, too?" Leo shot her a sideways glance. With his agility boosted, he was a blur of motion, sidestepping her instantly. The maid followed, her movements stiff but unnervingly fast. Leo picked up his pace. So did she, a persistent, unnerving shadow. "You've got to be kidding me." He spun around, his blood magic flaring, and slashed with the crimson edge. The blade drew a scarlet arc through the air. Thwack! With a sickeningly dull sound, the maid's head tumbled from her shoulders and rolled onto the manicured lawn. Leo blinked in surprise. She was fast, but apparently had no defenses at all. She hadn't even tried to dodge. But the real shock was yet to come. "Mr. Sterling, Her Highness has instructed that you are not to go outside." The severed head on the grass, its mouth opening and closing mechanically, repeated the same line. The headless body stood perfectly still in front of him, refusing to fall. "Please do not go outside. Do not go outside." The head on the ground struggled to turn toward him, its face still a blank, emotionless mask. A wave of revulsion washed over Leo, his scalp prickling. From the moment Oilia had disappeared, everything here had been twisted. No, that wasn't right. From the moment he'd arrived at this place, this perfect one-to-one replica of a memory, it had felt deeply, fundamentally wrong. He didn't hesitate. He broke into a dead sprint, running toward the wheat fields. He had to see what was out there. He had plenty of lives to burn, and he'd rather die knowing the truth than live in ignorant fear. The moonlit fields were empty, the only sound the rustling of the wheat in the wind. Leo pushed forward, his senses on high alert, trying to get his bearings. But the night was too dark, and the fields stretched on endlessly in every direction. And the punishment the rules had promised never came. No twisted monsters emerged from the crops. No murderous servants appeared with weapons drawn. There was nothing, and yet his heart beat faster and faster. Someone smart once said that the oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear of the unknown. That was exactly it. He had no idea what he was walking into. Leo summoned his crimson edge and began hacking a path through the dense, shoulder-high stalks, pushing deeper and deeper into the field. He walked and walked, sure he must be nearing the edge. Then he looked up and froze. Looming before him was a massive, dark estate, and in one of its windows, a single light was burning. His room. Wait, he thought, a cold dread washing over him. If the estate is in front of me, what's behind me? He whipped around. The moonlight fell on an endless, shimmering sea of wheat. I'm back where I started. It's a loop. Leo shuddered. He'd never encountered anything like this before, not even during his first run investigating the strangest cases for the BSI. This felt less like an anomaly and more like a haunting. Steeling himself, he had no choice but to walk back toward the estate. The decapitated maid was gone. He slowly approached the massive front doors, which were slightly ajar, revealing a pitch-black foyer beyond. Everything looked the same, but a knot of anxiety tightened in his gut. He felt like something terrible was about to happen. He had, after all, broken the rules. Leo clenched his fist, feeling the blood hum in his veins. Pushed by the blood core within him, he channeled his power to its absolute limit. The crimson edge in his hand grew larger, glowing brighter, and a sanguine mist began to swirl around him. It was all he could do. Taking a deep breath, he stepped back into the darkness of the estate. The instant his foot touched the marble floor, the grotesque, squelching, slithering sound returned, echoing through the vast, empty hall. Leo let out a humorless laugh. If he wasn't afraid of dying, there was nothing left to fear. He held the crimson edge high and followed the sound. As he moved deeper into the mansion, the noise grew louder, closer, until it seemed to be right on top of him. He stopped, his gaze falling on the wall beside him. Squelch! Gurgle. The skin-crawling sound were coming from right there. The answer came as the slithering, squelching chorus erupted from everywhere at once. From the walls in front of him and behind, from the floor beneath his feet, and the ceiling high above, from every room, every corner. It was omnipresent, clinging to him like a parasite. He reached out and tentatively touched the wall. It felt smooth and cool, perfectly normal. But a horrifying theory was forming in his mind. The wall. It felt alive. The entire estate felt like a colossal, waking beast, a writhing monster about to devour him. So this is it. Leo opened his menu one more time. To get answers, he had to make the trade. 1. Eye of Insight. Accessory, when worn, dramatically increases insight and enhances perception of supernatural phenomena. He selected it. A small, exquisite glass pin in the shape of a human eyeball appeared in his hand. A special description popped into view along with it. Sometimes, seeing the truth is not a blessing, investigator. Leo knew exactly what high insight could do. In a world teeming with indescribable things, seeing too much, knowing too much, could lead to a terrifying and irreversible end. Insight could help you investigate the supernatural and even master arcane arts, but more often than not, it was a TPK machine. He looked down and pinned the brooch to his lapel. Performing insight check, he lifted his head, and in that instant, a scene of such mind-shattering, soul-crushing horror unfolded before him that words could never do it justice. The world twisted. The walls were no longer plaster and wood, but were made of mangled flesh and clotted blood, haphazardly slapped together. Every surface of the estate, every architectural detail, was covered in pulsating, cancerous tumors that looked like a mix of internal organs and rotting meat. It was a living hell, a monument to butchery. It was all breathing. Like a single colossal heart, the whole structure pulsed. With every beat, the gory masses writhed, sprouting networks of veins and lymphatic vessels that spread like mold, crawling across every surface, scaling his pants, enveloping him. It was alive. All of it. Alive. Leo's eyes were stretched wide, shot through with blood. A crazed, broken laugh escaped his lips. He was lost. Your sanity has been depleted, unable to continue. Forcing reload. A cool breeze brushed against his face, and Leo's eyes snapped open. He gasped for air like a drowning man, his forehead slick with cold sweat. Mr. Sterling. The black-suited escort leading the way looked back at him, a flicker of confusion on his face. Leo didn't answer. He frantically looked around. Endless fields of wheat, a distant mill and windmill, and the estate ahead, bathed in the golden light of the setting sun. He was back. Save point. Ophelia's estate reloads remaining. For fifths he was alive, but his mind was far from calm. This time was different. The reload wasn't triggered by death, but by a total mental collapse. In the game, sanity was just another health bar. Witness something maddening enough, and the bar would drain. When it hit 0, the player would descend into an irreversible insanity. The game could no longer continue and would force a reload. That's what had happened. But Leo wiped at the sweat beading on his brow. He couldn't remember what he had seen. There was only the ghost of an unimaginable terror. His legs felt stiff as he followed the escort toward the looming estate, desperately trying to recall the final moments before he'd lost his mind. Squirming. Flesh. Alive. A jolt of that same paralyzing, negative energy shot through him. His head throbbed. Sanity -10. Can T think about it? Stop thinking about it. He forced the thoughts away. All he knew for sure was that he had seen something truly indescribable, the horrifying truth behind this estate. But for now, he had to forget. He just had to remember that Ophelia had been telling the truth. The rule about not leaving the estate was real. For now, he needed to play along. With a subtle movement, Leo unpinned the plaid cravat from his collar and stuffed it into his pocket. Rule number 2, don't make her angry. He had no idea what would happen if her corruption level maxed out, but if the punishment was on par with trying to escape, it was best to stay on her good side. When he was led into the dining room, the lady of the house, Ophelia, the woman hiding some unknowable, monstrous secret, turned with a warm smile. Leo, he mirrored her expression. Ophelia, it's been too long. They met in the middle of the room, embracing lightly like old friends reunited after years apart. As Leo's hands rested on her slender waist, his mind was anything but calm. Now that he knew the truth of this place, a bigger question had taken root. How could something so horrifyingly powerful exist here, on the southern outskirts of New Haven, less than 15 miles from the city limits? This was the capital of the Wigner Empire. The BSI, the Order of the Holy Edict, every major supernatural agency had its headquarters here. The second prince's army was garrisoned just outside the city. Even with the crime in the city's downtown district getting worse since the Magitech boom, it was limited to murder, arson, and back-alley cults. How could an entity of this magnitude have slipped in completely undetected? How had Oilia managed it? He gently pulled back, his eyes meeting her pale blue ones. 4 years. Did you miss me? She asked, a rare, playful smile gracing her usually cool features. Leo didn't answer with words. Instead, he pulled her back in, holding her tightly, burying his face for a moment in the crook of her neck. Leo, she gasped, surprised by a sudden display of affection. The escort and the nearby made quickly and quietly excuse themselves. Leo felt her struggle slightly in his arms, but didn't let go, letting the action speak for itself. It was a calculated risk. With a woman who could practically read his emotions, going on the offensive was his best bet. He held the embrace for a long moment, until he felt her body finally relax against his. She lowered her head, a touch of shyness in her posture. You miss me that much? This kind of passion isn't like you. Leo loosened his grip, and like a nimble deer, she playfully slipped out of his arms. Looking back at him, she said with a grin, "Don't think a hug gets you off the hook for being gone for 4 years." He smiled back, clutching his stomach in mock pain. "I'm starving. It's been a long trip." That part, at least, was true. He was starving. The terror had left him famished. "Then let's eat." She clapped her hands, and a line of expressionless maids filed in, bearing trays of sumptuous food. "I had them make all your favorites. Try some." They sat, and, just like last time, Oilia recommended the foie gras. Leo took a bite and chewed thoughtfully. "This is my favorite dish, too. What do you think?" she asked, resting her chin on her hand, her eyes full of expectation. He chewed for another moment, then frowned slightly. "What's wrong?" she asked, her smile tightening. "Is it not good?" "Well," Leo considered. "It's average." Just as a shadow crossed Oilia's face, he broke into a gentle smile. "Not as good as mine. I'll cook for you tomorrow. You'll see." Oilia blinked, stunned for a second, clearly not expecting that response. Then a soft, genuine smile blossomed on her face. "I've rarely seen you cook." "What? Did you spend the last 4 years secretly training to be a chef?" she teased. "I'm an amazing cook, you know," Leo said with a wink, then gave an exaggerated, comical bow with a hand over his heart. "I have devoted myself to the culinary arts for quite some time, Your Grace. You have the honor of being my very first patron." Oilia couldn't help but laugh, a sound as lovely as a blooming rose. "Is that so? Still such a silver tongue. Do you use those lines on all the other girls?" Leo's face turned serious. "You can question my character, but you can never question my cooking." He wasn't entirely lying. He was a damn good cook, though his expertise was in a culinary style that didn't exist in this world. But considering the local cuisine rarely ventured beyond roasting, frying, or stewing, this was a culture that considered atrocities like fish and chips a delicacy and had its own equivalent of a Jell-O mold with floating hot dogs. You figured the bar was pretty low. It was time to show this world what real food tasted like. Of course, the whole exchange was just a distraction. And it worked. After his initial passionate embrace and the subsequent charming banter, Oilia seemed much more at ease than in the previous loop. She didn't press him further about his absence. They chatted idly as they ate, and eventually, Oilia laid out the 3 rules of the estate once more. Hearing the rules for a second time, Leo's expression grew serious. Despite their cheerful conversation and the fact that Oilia hadn't yet revealed her monstrous side, he knew exactly what his situation was. He was a prisoner. A prisoner in a luxurious 30,000 square foot estate. The deal was that he had to stay here with her for 2 weeks. After that, she would let him go, never interfere in his life again, and leave his sister and professor at the old house alone. But that was impossible. Oilia was not that generous. He was certain his house was already under heavy surveillance. Whether she gave the order to act was entirely up to her. And she was a princess of the empire. Even if Helena and the others were powerful, they stood little chance against the sheer number of official state-sanctioned supernaturals at the empire's disposal. This was, after all, their turf. So, what was Oilia's real plan? Why 2 weeks? What would happen at the end of that time? And what role did that indescribable, living horror he dared not remember play in all of this? The questions gave him a headache, but he had to keep a pleasant smile plastered on his face. After they finished eating, Oilia came over and wrapped her arms around his neck affectionately. "I have some things to take care of. It's getting late, so you should go to bed." Leo circled his arms around her soft, slender waist. "Are you leaving the estate?" he asked casually. "No, of course not. I'll be working in my office, Not far from you, she said, looking him straight in the eye. Not leaving? Leo thought back to the empty, silent office from the last loop. The mystery only deepened. Where did she go then? And where did the maids go? Noticing his expression, Oilia teased. What? Can't bear to be apart from me. Leo didn't answer directly. Instead, his hand started to wander. All the better. It'll be more convenient for us to get into some trouble tonight. Wah! A blush immediately bloomed across her cheeks. She swatted his chest, embarrassed and annoyed. When did you get so crude? That's not very gentlemanly. This is exactly what a gentleman is, Leo chuckled. In his old world, the word gentleman had long since been corrupted to mean pervert. He felt her tense as his hands roamed beneath her dress, her smooth, pale skin turning a faint cherry blossom pink. Oilia was clearly not used to such intimate contact. Her voice grew softer, her breath catching, until she let out a quiet, flustered gasp. No, you can't. Leo, let me go. I have things to do. I have to leave for a bit tonight. She was breathing heavily. It's important. Leo released her, feigning disappointment. Oilia took a shaky breath, then shot him a look that was a mixture of indignation and embarrassment before practically fleeing the room. If you need anything, just ask one of the maids. And remember what I said. Don't go wandering off. Her voice trailed away down the hall. I'm going. See you tomorrow. Her last few words echoed in the now silent hall. See you tomorrow, Leo said with a smile. After she was gone, maids filed in to clear the long dining table, though Leo had barely eaten anything. He watched them, his smile slowly fading. The flirtatious probing had worked. She let her guard down and unintentionally revealed two crucial facts. She had to leave tonight for something important. It clearly wasn't to work on the Emperor's ledgers. Whatever Oilia's important business was, it had to be connected to this grotesque estate and to him. He suspected she would be gone every night for the next 2 weeks. He filed the clue away. A maid escorted him back to his room. The first night of this new loop passed without incident. Gazing at the moonlight outside his window, he slowly closed the door, went to bed, and slept. Early the next morning, a soft knock at the door announced a maid with a delicate breakfast. After he ate, Leo walked out of his room and found Oilia waiting for him in the grand foyer, a bright smile on her face. How did you sleep? Are you getting used to staying here? Leo nodded. The bed was a little unfamiliar, but I slept soundly after a while. He was telling the truth. Sincerity was his most potent weapon. My apologies, I overlooked that. She glanced at a maid beside her. Find me a vintage wooden bed, this style, she said, describing a piece of furniture in perfect detail. I want to hear by tonight. Yes, Your Highness, the maid replied, her face a blank mask. Leo watched Oilia, a chill running down his spine. Is she ordering an exact replica of the bed from my old house? She remembers a random piece of furniture from my home. It wasn't that he was moved by her attentiveness to such a small detail. He was terrified by her suffocating, obsessive need for control. All right, come here. Oilia's expression shifted, her smile returning. She took Leo's hand and led him into a dressing room, so large it could have been a boutique. Racks upon racks of expensive menswear lined the walls. She folded her arms, looking him up and down critically. Your clothes are far too shabby. Get rid of this outfit. I never want to see you wear the same thing twice. She pulled a new suit from a rack and shoved it into his arms, pushing him toward a changing stall. Go on, hurry. The man who is to be mine will not wear anything that costs less than $50,000. What could he say to that? All right, all right. A few minutes later, he emerged, transformed. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored three-piece suit, complete with a fashionable hat. Oilia's eyes lit up, her gaze growing hot as she took in the elegant, handsome man before her. She nodded in satisfaction. That's more like it. My man deserves nothing but the best. Leo looked at her, a helpless feeling washing over him. Was he being kept? He surreptitiously felt the fabric of the suit. $50,000? What is this thing made of, woven gold? The decadent spending habits of the imperial aristocracy were truly something to behold. And don't you dare look like some country boy who's never seen a nice thing in his life. Oilia, who had been so pleased a moment before, was now scowling at his reaction. Oh, what? You heard me. She grabbed his hand and pulled him out of the dressing room. You'll be appearing before all the great nobles of the empire, and you need to be presentable enough to satisfy my father. You can't do that looking like you just crawled out of a gutter. As she dragged him along, Leo asked, confused, what exactly are you taking me to? And who am I meeting? Oilia stopped and turned to him with a cold smirk. What do you think? The royal wedding, of course. The monosyllable escaped his lips before he could stop it. Ophelia's expression shifted into something halfway between a smile and a sneer. What's the matter? Are you saying you don't want to? Leo stared at her, his mind a tangled mess of confusion and dread. He said nothing. The air in the room instantly turned ice cold. Corruption level +10. Ophelia's smile was chilling. She dragged him back into the center of the foyer, where a group of maids now stood in a line. One of them wore a different uniform, marking her as the head housekeeper. What are you? Leo glanced nervously at the assembled staff. Isn't it obvious? She said, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. It's time to teach you some manners.